Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku had the perfect plan for love part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story sleepykiri from 𝗧𝗵𝗲. So let's start the video. Moonlight was falling through windows, lighting up a small room. It was peaceful. However, a light shuffling of bed sheets was interrupting the silence. Kirishima couldn't bring himself to sleep. He watched how clock arrows were quietly counting minutes. A heavy sigh left Boy's lips, with a long train of thoughts running laps in his head, and it didn't seem that it will stop anytime soon. The only thing left for him was to follow clock arrows' movements in a brief hope for eventually dozing off. Another minute passed by. Then second, third. He clicked his tongue and slid down the headboard of the bed. Kirishima stared at the blank ceiling, eyes following shadow edges. Boy was tracing lines in the air with his finger, when a sudden phone buzzing snapped him out of countless thoughts. Kirishima lazily reached his nightstand and looked at the screen. Isn't it too late for Taha? 3 new messages from Mina. Hey Kiri, I know you're awake, pick your damn phone up. Did something happen? Boy shook his head in an attempt to clear his mind and concentrate. Kirishima sat up in his bed. He unlocked the phone and clicked on unread messages, opening their private chat. Hey, Boy typed quickly, is everything alright? It only took a second for the reply to come finally. Took you long enough. Kirishima rolled his eyes at the message. I was supposed to be asleep, you know. He grunted, understanding that now he won't be getting any sleep for another hour or so. Kirishima watched how ellipses, signaling that Mina was typing, faded in and out multiple times. He felt uneasiness spreading over his body. Girl was obviously looking for the best way to start a long and hard topic. Another minute passed, before she finally texted, you said you'll do it today. Oh. Kirishima answered as he flopped back on the pillow, closing face with his hands. Phone fell beside him, but he didn't dare to look at it. Last thing Boy wanted now was to talk about his messed up love life. He sighed deeply, wishing he was asleep and avoiding what was about to come. Kirishima grunted, before looking at the screen. 2 new messages from Mina popped up. Don't owe me. You told you'll confess your feelings today. I'm screwed. Kirishima could feel her anger through the phone. If there was a person he was the most afraid of getting angry, it certainly was Mina. His body shivered at the thought. He took a deep breath and typed, I've waited for the right moment. And girl's reply didn't make him wait, not even a second. Kirishima let out yet another sigh, typing there wasn't any. He hesitated for a moment, finger hovering over the send button, before pressing it. 𝐒𝐩𝐢𝐴 Kirishima. Mina's reply sent shivers down his spine. This is bad. He bit his lip and buried himself deeper in sheets. Multiple ways to excuse himself flew through his head, but none of them was good enough. Ellipses appeared again, which made him immediately text back, wait, I really tried, but he didn't give me a chance. Kirishima sighed and added, what could I do? It took Mina a couple of minutes to reply. Probably fighting the urge to kill me. Boy chuckled painfully at the thought. Another moment passed, and a new text popped up. Ugh. You're trying for a month now. It was permeated with annoyance, however sounded softer than Kirishima expected. But was all he managed to type, before receiving another messages. No appeared on the screen, which now made Boy completely aware of how pissed Mina was. It's obvious that he likes you. Does he really? Boy squeezed blanket with his free hand. Yes, he does. Came with a minute of silence, before next text pierced his chest with unexpected pain. What are you so scared of? Being rejected. Kirishima swallowed hard. He liked Bakugou for a pretty long time now and felt his heart ache at the word, although it never was the real reason for holding back his feelings. Of course, rejection would be hard to handle, but there was something way worse than that. Boy spent days imagining all possible outcomes, however only one truly frightened him. Losing my closest friend, Kirishima replied, thought spreading chills all over his body. Kiri. Boy felt Mina trying to sound as soft and understanding as she could. You won't lose him. Kirishima took a deep shaky breath, before continuing this not really pleasant conversation. I know it isn't manly to be scared of confessing your love. He made a pause, letting out a deep sigh yet again, before sending, but it's Bakugou we're talking about. He looked outside the window. This night was peaceful, sky covered in clouds with only a couple of stars shining through. Moon's light fell into the room with unusual softness. Kirishima wondered what would his best friend do if he found out that Boy has a crush on him. Will he be able to move on after rejection? Or would he be enough to meet Blonde's expectations and be a good boyfriend? Kirishima looked back at his phone. You never know how he'll react, he typed. It was clear that Mina hesitated with an answer. Ellipses faded in and out for a couple of minutes, before a new message eventually popped up. Give me a day, and I'll work something out, followed by a short deal. Deal. Kirishima texted back, not truly hoping for her coming up with a decent idea. He didn't know what to say more. He didn't want to confess anymore. He didn't believe something good will come out of this. Listen, Mina texted, probably feeling his fear and hesitation. You won't know an answer if you'll keep being scared to ask. You're right, Kirishima texted. He felt weak, admitting he knew it with still being scared to make a move. It isn't manly to continue hesitating, right? Mina's determination played its role. Kirishima looked at the wall, separating his room from Bakugou's one. Maybe it worth a try after all. He smiled, thinking about a possible positive outcome, and texted, fine, I count on you. Mina's reply came right after, that's my boy. Now go to sleep, and we'll talk more about this tomorrow. Kirishima felt girl's excitement. He smiled at the text, before replying, thank you, Mina. It's nothing, she texted. I really want the two of you to finally get together. Kirishima could swear she was giggling, even though boy knew he was too far to hear her. Night night, our lover boy, she texted and went offline. Good night. Kirishima chuckled and closed the chat. His eyes stopped at the home screen. It was a photo of him and Bakugou, accidentally taken by Mina, somewhere during their first months at UA. Girl sent it to the both of them, saying how good they looked together. Bakugou clicked his tongue, naming it a complete bullshit and deleting the picture. Kirishima, on the other hand, never told Explosive Blonde that he kept it and made his home screen. Why would he do that anyway? It isn't like he wants to be blown up or sent flying to the other end of the city. Kirishima laughed softly at the thought and switched off the phone. He tossed it back to the nightstand, laying down and looking at the wall that separated his and Bakugou's rooms again. What did I get myself into? Friday started without any troubles and was promising to be an ordinary day. But not when it comes to Class 1A. They managed to get without scolding through the first half of the day and didn't annoy Aizawa much. Partly it was thanks to Mina and Denki being quieter than usual. However, the fact of them not being up to anything dumb or noisy concerned Kirishima since early morning. There's something going on, and it's nothing good for sure. Boy hoped it won't have anything to do with him, since his raging headache was already bothering him enough. Boy barely got any sleep last night. Thoughts about Bakugou rejecting him and refusing to keep being friends were hitting his head one by one, keeping him awake. Kirishima sighed heavily, lazily finishing his lunch. He wasn't in a mood for a loud chatter that their squad was currently at, however tried to keep the mood light. On questions about him being quiet, he simply replied with bad headache, nothing much. His problems didn't need to concern anyone else. Bakugou stood up first and started heading out. Kirishima hurried, throwing his fork on the plate, to keep up with the blonde. However, got caught gently by the wrist. He turned around and saw Mina smiling softly at him, with eyes telling him to stay for a bit more. Oi, shitty hair, are you coming? Bakugou turned around to look at the boy, who now put his plate back on the table. Bakugou, he'll catch up in a few. Mina winked at the blonde. Bakugou shrugged, rolling his eyes, which everyone took for his usual whatever, and headed out. Kirishima felt a sudden urge to apologize. However, he knew that the blonde most likely won't even notice. Does he ever pay any attention to what I'm doing anyway? Instead of being better at dodging his blasts, of course. Boy felt his chest tighten and let out a deep sigh, while his eyes followed Bakugou out of the cafeteria. Zero, can you? Mina nodded towards the blonde, so it won't look bad. Sure thing, Boy nodded with a soft smile. But you gotta tell me everything after. Of course, bro. Denki finger-gunned at his friend. Later then, Zero waved and ran off, trying to catch up with the explosive blonde. Bakubro, wait up. And you, hopeless lover boy, girl looked at Kirishima, whose gaze froze on the cafeteria entry. Sit down. Kirishima felt her tugging on his wrist and snapped out of thoughts. Boy quietly did what he was told, looking completely out of everything that was going on around him. Why do I feel like I shouldn't have stayed? Kirishima put elbows on the table and leaned on his fist with his cheek, giving both friends a confused, but totally not surprised look. We talked about yesterday, Denki started. You really need some professional help with this. Can you remind me, why should we bring this up now? Kirishima muttered out with a brief sign of annoyance in his voice. He sighed, arching an eyebrow. Couldn't you do it in the evening? Nope, Denki shook his head, unbothered by friend's expression. Bro, you're really a lost cause. Kirishima's eyes dropped on the table. He didn't want to hear something he already knew. Boy picked up a fork and started drawing circles on his plate, not willing to continue this conversation. So, Mina broke an uncomfortable silence. We came up with a perfect plan. And what this perfect plan is, Kirishima forced himself to look at his friends. This isn't going to be anything good. Is it? Boy rolled his eyes, seeing how overexcited these two looked. Yup, it's definitely something 𝗬𝗪, karaoke love confession, Denki exclaimed, darting finger guns at Kirishima. Boy choked on the air as his eyes widened in shock. Karaoke what? Karaoke love confession, Denki repeated excitedly. You'll sing him a love song. Mina looked at how stunned Kirishima looked and raised an eyebrow. Don't you like it? She started tracing lines on the table, explaining the plan. We can make a karaoke evening on Saturday. It won't seem weird since we're going there pretty often. And all you'll have to do is to sing a love song, looking Bakugou straight in the eyes, and then ask him out after. I'm not going to do that in front of everyone. Kirishima eagerly shook his head. Why? Denki whined. It would be so romantic. Bakugou will love it. No, Kirishima jerked his head down and continued torturing the plate. I was right. Nothing good. Kiri, just think about it. Mina was more than determined to finally make them a couple. It's easier than it seems. I am not doing that. Kirishima glared at two of them. I can't confess when we're alone. And now you expect me to do it in front of everyone. Are you out of your mind? Technically yes, but it's not the point now. Denki gave the boy a bright smile. We'll definitely be cheering you up. Isn't it easier when you have someone by your side? Mina smiled softly. I don't know. Kirishima's voice became quieter as he covered face with hands. It's not like you'll be singing there with me. Mina sighed. One thing she knew for sure, none of them was going to sing with him. It was intimate, something only a person in love could do. Her sight wandered all around the place in an attempt to think up something, when suddenly her eyes sparkled. She spotted a certain green-haired boy. Actually, a slight smirk appeared on girl's lips. What if you won't be singing alone? Huh? Boys exchanged confused looks and followed Mina's eyes. Midoriya, girl called softly, do you have a second? Boy looked at their direction and slightly nodded. He walked up to their table. Hey guys, what is it? Midoriya smiled, sitting beside Kirishima. How's it going with your crush on Todoroki? Mina asked playfully. Eh? Midoriya's jaw dropped and face immediately turned red. Mina, what are you do? Kirishima blinked fast, looking at the girl. If he thought that it couldn't be any worse, then he was wrong. Girl quickly slammed a hand over Redhead's mouth to shut him up, her voice sounding sly. Did you finally get together? And no. But how did you? Midoriya would do anything to get away from this room, even if it costed him his life. You two are pretty obvious, she shrugged, smiling softly, as her eyes flicked at Kirishima. As someone else here too? Oh, I see where you're going. Denki grinned at confused boys and chuckled. Listen, Mina leaned back and looked Midoriya in the eyes. We have a perfect plan for you two confessing your feelings to the loved ones. Huh? Boy tilted his head, exchanging scared looks with Kirishima, who wasn't feeling any better about this whole situation. I'm not sure if it's a good idea. He started mumbling, with Denki trying hard to convince Boy into agreeing. I'm screwed. Kirishima looked at the cafeteria entry, where Bakugou disappeared just a few minutes ago. It wasn't the best idea his friends could come up with, but he couldn't think about anything else, and doing nothing was even worse. If I'll agree on that, will it work? Bakugou opened his dorm door, inviting Kirishima inside with a nod. Boy smiled softly at his friend. Such a gentleman. He chuckled. Fuck off, shitty hair. Bakugou hit Kirishima on the shoulder, pushing him in the room. Sadly, Kirishima couldn't catch Blonde's reaction to the comment, which made him frown. This headache is killing me, man. Boy flopped on the floor near Bakugou's bed, leaning onto it with his back. Kirishima's eyes followed explosive Blonde, who sat down in front of him. Did you take any meds? He asked blankly, taking books out and sorting them on the floor. And not really, Kirishima rubbed back of his neck. I thought it'll pass without them. TCH, dumbass, Bakugou leaned closer, putting a hand on Boy's forehead. You may have a slight temperature. He made a pause before continuing. Hard to tell just from this though. Shall we cancel this today then? Blonde looked at Kirishima, raising an eyebrow. Nah, I'll be good. Boy shook his head, feeling his cheeks burning. He was more than fine with enduring some more pain, if it meant he could spend another hour with his favorite explosive Blonde. Bakugou rolled his eyes and opened his notes. Anyway, where did we stop last time? Minutes were passing by, as boys were studying in the small room. Kirishima calmly listened to the blonde explaining different topics. His eyes were following Bakugou's finger, which was tracing countless books and papers. This warm feeling of being close to him. Hearing his voice. Seeing blonde's calm side, the one he never showed others. All that made Kirishima space out again. His eyes were wandering all over Bakugou's perfect features. Kirishima observed every little movement of his lips, every sparkle running across his bright eyes, every expression he made, every strand of blonde hair falling onto his dark eyelashes. He was handsome. He was perfect. What if I told you I like you? What if I found the courage to ask you out? Kirishima looked at how relaxed Bakugou looked, how words on the white pages disappeared under his fingers, how soft his movements were. Would you accept my feelings? Would you still be here with me? Kirishima wasn't sure what was the exact moment he fell for Bakugou. It felt like he was in love with his best friend since Boy first saw him. Kirishima perfectly knew when to tease him and when to avoid doing that. He knew what each one of blonde's reactions, movements, and expressions meant. Kirishima knew when to stay by Bakugou's side, even if he's chasing him away, and when to give him space. However, he knew nothing about blonde's ways to show interest in someone or showing affection. Boy couldn't read this one particular, such important feeling. He sighed. Will you ever love me back? Oi, hair for brains. Bakugou's growl snapped Kirishima out of his thoughts. Are you even listening to me? Boy tensed up, looking into blonde's deep scarlet eyes. He desperately tried to find there at least the tiniest hint for his feelings being mutual. However, saw nothing, only anger and annoyance. Mina was right. At this rate, I won't get an answer. Kirishima exhaled deeply, his expression changing from hope to frustration. Sorry, Bakugou, I guess I overestimated myself. Kirishima wanted to say more, but words weren't coming out. TCH, Bakugou frowned. I told we should have cancelled. He closed all books and stood up. You better sleep it off before it gets worse. Awa, are you worried about me? Kirishima gave his friend the softest toothy grin. Shut up, shitty hair. Blonde threw Kirishima's bag at the boy and chased him out of the room. He walked inside his dorm and immediately crashed on the bed. Did he really worry about me just now? Blush spread on his cheeks and eyes sparkled with joy. Kirishima put a hand on his forehead, repeating Bakugou's gesture. Warm feeling washed all over his body. I'm not crazy, am I? He blushed before chasing me out. Even just a little. Did he? Boy squeaked from happiness and fished his phone out of the bag, scrolling through his contact list. I can't run away from my feelings anymore. He exhaled deeply and pressed on Midoriya's contact. Hey, remember what we were talking about during lunch? Kirishima hesitated for a second, shiver running up his spine, before he pressed send. Boy almost started to regret his life choices, while waiting for the reply. However, it didn't take long for his phone to buzz. Sure, was it even possible to forget? Midoriya replied. Guess no. Kirishima chuckled and continued. I gave it a thought and maybe we should go for it. Boy felt his hands shiver in disbelief of what he's saying. Other way, we're both a lost cause. I guess. Midoriya hesitated, but was smart enough to understand that he won't make a step further, otherwise we can try. For you, it's definitely a win-win situation. Kirishima was sure about a positive outcome for his friend. Everyone was aware of how in love Todoroki was with the green-haired boy, so it wouldn't be much of the problem for them to get together. But he didn't know what to expect from Bakugou. Kirishima shook his head, chasing negativity away, and texted Todoroki, obviously is head over heels for you, man. Aye. How come everyone sees that except of me? Midoriya most likely was blushing at Boy's words. Kirishima laughed at the guess. Unlucky of you, he typed, trying to ease the conversation. Boy remembered what he was texting Midoriya for in the first place, and asked, are you in then? It took Boy a couple of minutes to reply. And it was understandable, since Kirishima himself wasn't sure if he's actually ready to go for it. Then his phone buzzed again, and a new message popped up. I'm in. No turning back now. Kirishima, be manly. A wave of goosebumps ran up his body. Boy talked with Midoriya a little more, before they agreed on talking everything out tomorrow. Kirishima opened his conversation with Mina. We're in was the only thing he sent her. But it was enough for her to understand. Girl didn't make him wait long, as a quick reply flew back. Knew it. Leave everything else to me. Kirishima smiled at the text and switched his phone off. Boy tossed it to the side, looking at the ceiling. I did it. Kirishima woke up to a quiet knocking on his dorm door. He growled and looked at the time. It took a couple of seconds for Boy to come to his senses, his vision slowly getting less and less blurred. 9 in the morning. Isn't it Saturday? He rolled his eyes and lazily got up, throwing his blanket to the side. Kirishima opened the door, scratching the back of his neck. Good morning. Midoriya was looking at the boy with a soft apologetic smile. Did I wake you up? And there it was, a wave of uncomfortable feeling, almost panic for messing up in his eyes. Morning, Kirishima yawned, shaking his head. It's fine. He nodded, inviting the boy in. Midoriya walked into the small room. Did you tell Mina about our decision? Boy asked, looking at Kirishima, who was now struggling to put his hoodie on. He was visibly sleepy, which made green-haired Boy feel guilty. Yay, Kirishima answered, combing his hair with fingers. I texted her yesterday right after we finished talking. He gave Boy a smile, heading towards the bathroom. Got something on your mind already? Kinda. I thought that maybe we could talk it out during breakfast. Midoriya saw Kirishima nodding with toothbrush in his mouth and smiled. We can go to the cafe nearby to not attract any attention from others. He continued, following Boy's movements. Kirishima washed his face, throwing a quick sure and heading out of the bathroom back to the room. Give me a second, I have to find my wallet, he smiled brightly, adjusting his jeans and slipping into maroon sneakers. Then Kirishima nodded and boys made their way out of the dorms. It didn't take too much time for them to get to the cafe. Boys sat down at the table in a corner of it and made their order. They were the only customers, since it was still early Saturday morning. Usually people would sleep, but boys had to get out of the dorms now, if they didn't want to get questions from classmates. Both of them knew how fast Midoriya would get caught into an endless conversation with Todoroki or Kirishima, would get dragged somewhere by their so-called Baka squad. I can't believe we're doing this. Kirishima chuckled nervously, falling back in the chair. Yay. Midoriya drawled, a little smile playing on his lips. Are you sure it'll go well though? Boy started torturing a napkin between his fingers. He already got comments from classmates about how obvious Todoroki is, however wasn't completely sure if confessing was a right decision. For you, yes, Kirishima smiled at his friend. For me, I can only hope for the best. Boy's eyes wandered all around the place, searching for a distraction. Thoughts started crawling into his head yet again. And they definitely weren't the nicest ones. Midoriya noticed how Kirishima's smile faded. It's still better than doing nothing. He covered friend's hand with his own, to attract his attention. Midoriya knew better than anyone how hard it is to deal with Bakugou. Kaken. Please, love him back. Boy murmured under his breath, only for himself to hear, and looked Kirishima in the eyes. Everything will be all right. Midoriya gave Kirishima an encouraging smile. Thank you, Midoriya. Kirishima smiled back at him and adjusted himself in the seat, leaning onto his fist. So. Boy took a sip of his iced coffee. Mina said to leave all the organization to her. Good. Then the only thing left for us to do is choosing a song. Midoriya took his phone out, taking a bite of a sandwich in the other hand. Right. Kirishima followed Boy's moves and fished his phone out the pocket. Maybe I even know some good ones. He scrolled through his playlists, looking for a song to offer. Boys spent a couple of minutes in a comfortable silence, eating their breakfast and searching for a perfect song to go with. Midoriya hummed different melodies, while Kirishima was twisting red hair strands between his fingers. They didn't have much choice since none of them wanted to choose two new or two girly ones. How about Make You Mine by Public? Midoriya looked at Kirishima, noticing how Boy's eyes stopped wandering on the screen. It definitely wasn't the best choice, just something to start with. Kirishima hummed, thinking through the possible scenario. Don't you think we should get something more? Boy furrowed his eyebrows, looking for a proper word. Lively. Considering who we are going to confess to, I think that maybe a more dynamic song would be better. Midoriya started mumbling. Midoriya, Kirishima wanted to snap his friend out of his thoughts, but got cut out. Then Someone to You by Banners. Midoriya's eyes darted to the boy sitting next to him. I like it. But I have something even better. He put his phone on the table in front of Midoriya. Boy looked at the screen that said Somebody to You by the Vamps and listened for a couple of seconds, remembering the song. Oh, I used to love it a lot. Midoriya exclaimed, bright smile appearing on his lips. It'll be easy to divide for two of us, and it's simple to sing, Boy said, bobbing his head in the rhythm. Should we stick with it then? Kirishima asked, watching his friend nodding good. Boys looked lyrics up on the internet, deciding on how to sing it. We can sing 2 verses each, so it would be fair, Kirishima stated, sliding his finger up and down the screen. Chorus, we will sing together. What goes to pre-chorus? I can take the first one, and you'll sing the second one. Kirishima wasn't sure if his voice will be good enough, but it was worth a try for sure. Sounds good to me, Midoriya agreed with eyes full of concentration. On word somebody to you, we can point to Kaken and Todoroki, so they'll get why we're singing it in the first place. Kirishima smiled. What boy took as a yes? Midoriya's thoughts went wandering farther as he thought about the whole scene. Also, maybe we shouldn't wear hoodies, since we're asking them out. Something more suiting their taste? He bit his lip, being lost in thoughts. Something close to the style they would like. Definitely, Kirishima gave his friend a big toothy smile. I love it. Midoriya looked at the boy, with eyes full of determination. It settled then. Cafe was slowly getting more and more crowded as time went by. People probably started waking up, wanting to get their morning coffee. New visitors came in, changing atmosphere around the place. Sun shined brighter, making little rainbows dance in half-filled glasses on tables. Boys were still sitting together. Midoriya was suggesting some simple ideas about their little performance, briefly touching a topic about how amazing Todoroki is. It made Kirishima chuckle, making friends' cheeks turn bright red. However, he himself couldn't stay as positive, laughing off his one-sided love for Bakugou. Boy was still unsure about whether or not he should do it, but it was too late to back off. This way, topic about karaoke grew into discussion of their messed-up love life and shared encouragement. Kirishima enjoyed Midoriya's company and got as invested in their chit-chat as his friend. However, sometimes he still felt spacing out. Boy's thoughts were wandering over every little moment he spent with Bakugou. Every second he's seen a slight smile on his lips. Every their sparring and evening of studying together. I'm so obviously in love with you. Kirishima let out a deep sigh. Why can't you see it? He knew that with Bakugou's explosive character, confessing his feelings will be a big risk. However, Kirishima was ready to take it. He got sick of waiting and staying alarmed every second, in case he'll get a proper hint about Bakugou taking a step towards him. Moments of being alone with the blonde were a sweet torture for the boy. Every time Kirishima felt like standing in front of him with an outstretched hand, inviting Bakugou to take it in his. But no matter how pleading look was in Kirishima's eyes, how shining his smile was, or how close his best friend stood to him, Bakugou never took his hand. Maybe he never even intended to. Kirishima, Midoriya's soft voice snapped him out of his thoughts. Is everything okay? Boy looked at him with a concern, already guessing the reason for Kirishima's spacing out. Sorry. Kirishima gave Midoriya an apologetic smile and rubbed the back of his neck. Got carried away for a second. He let out a painful chuckle and threw his head back, eyes wandering all over the ceiling. It was much easier to cover anxiety with a laugh than to talk it out now. Their chit-chat was disturbed by phones buzzing. Boys exchanged confused looks, but the same thought struck them a second after. Mina, they exclaimed, immediately opening group chat. Group chat, Class 1 Mina. Is everyone free this evening? Is it what I'm thinking about? Midoriya chuckled nervously, looking at his friend. Kirishima nodded, noticing how fast-coming replies popped up on the screen. Todoroki. Except for studying, yes, Uraraka. Yes, why? Ida. I hope you're not planning anything against the rules again, man. Don't ruin our fun. Kirishima pouted jokingly at Ida's message, which made Midoriya laugh and relax a bit. Mina. What do you mean again? 3 Takoyami. More or less free Denki. Let's go to the karaoke. Mina. We haven't been there for a while, Mina. And my friend can drop the price of a big room today, Midoriya. Sounds like fun. Circumflex. Kirishima looked at the boy, who sat in front of him. Midoriya looked scared of what's to come, but tried hard not to show it. Good. Now Todoroki will go for sure. He smiled softly. Gyro. I'm in a gyro. Sounds good. Boys sat quietly, looking at their classmates, agreeing to Mina's suggestion and Ida. Being himself as always. Why aren't you saying anything? Midoriya asked, looking at Kirishima. However, right before Boy could answer, Todoroki's message popped up, saying why not. Midoriya's cheeks lit up. Thought so. Kirishima chuckled. 1 in and 1 left. Kirishima winked at his friend, who was now shining from excitement. Boy had snapped his eyes to the phone as it buzzed once again after a small pause. Mina. Looks like almost everyone's in Mina. Bakugou. Zero? You know I'm up for anything, Mina. Sure, buddy. 3 Bakugou. Not going Denki. Oh, come on, bro. Bakugou. Fuck off, dunce face Bakugou. I'm not taking part in this shit again, TCH. Kirishima rolled his eyes. And why did I even think it'll be any different this time? Boy sighed and started typing. Kirishima. I'm in, so you're going to circumflex Bakugou. No. Kirishima. Please Bakugou. No Kirishima. Pretty please. Bakugou. TCH Bakugou. Whatever, I bet. He rolled his eyes just now. Kirishima chuckled, imagining Blonde's annoyed face. He texted a quick, he's in. 3. Before switching the phone off and leaning back in his chair. Oh. Midoriya looked at now pleased-looking boy. I see now. He giggled lightly at Kirishima, which made him tilt his head in confusion. He agrees only if our whole squad asks him to, boy sighed. He felt bad for pushing Bakugou to go. Kirishima perfectly knew how he hated these events, and how easily he was getting bored there. However, this was an exception. Boy needed him to be there. Kirishima scoffed. So stubborn. I think it's not about that, Midoriya smirked. It's because a certain someone is asking him to go. Boy giggled, making Kirishima's cheeks take a light pink shade. Midoriya sighed in relief for not being the only oblivious one here. Another Mina's message popped up on Boy's screens, saying 7 p.m. at our usual karaoke place then. 3. They exchanged anxious looks, words stuck in their throats. Everything was settled, and there was no way they could run away from it now. Silence hung up in the air for several minutes, while confirmation messages from classmates were filling the chat. Boys didn't know if they should be scared or excited about upcoming event. No turning back now, Kirishima finally spoke up, smiling softly. He stretched his fist towards Midoriya. Let's do it, Boy smiled back, as they bumped their fists together with eyes full of dedication. Bakugou was lying on the bed with a book in his hands. Boy's eyes were full of concentration and interest. Slightly open window let a cool breeze enter his small dorm room, making him relax even more. Unfortunately, a sudden phone buzzing broke this perfect silence. Bakugou frowned. Who the fuck is it now? He took a annoying device from the nightstand and looked at the lightened up screen. 6 new messages from Class 1 Mina. Is everyone free this evening? Todoroki. Except for studying, yes Uraraka. Yes, why? TCH, he opened the chat. What are these morons up for today? Blonde's eyes scanned through messages. Karaoke. Are you kidding me? Low sarcastic chuckle escaped his lips as he rolled his eyes. Bakugou could barely tolerate hanging out with his 4 idiots, not to mention the whole class. There was no way he could enjoy a day with Todoroki or Deku being around. He sighed in frustration. To tell the truth, somewhere deep down inside Bakugou knew he wasn't welcome there anyway. He didn't want to make classmates uncomfortable with his presence, at least not on weekends. That's why he tried to spend them away from them, reading or working out on his own. Blonde could be rude and arrogant, however he wasn't dumb. Bakugou has seen how tensed up everyone gets around him, how they avoid sparring or teaming up with him during classes, and how alarmed they stay, being in one room with him. Boy knew, but his pride was commanding Bakugou to swallow it up, and to only care about becoming the #1 hero. There was another reason though. Bakugou hated spending time with a big party. He liked being a center of attention, however enjoyed little groups more. Boy would never admit it, but he liked his so-called Baka squad. Blonde calls them all sorts of not very nice names, but it doesn't mean that he hates them that much. Yes, they can annoy him or completely piss him off, but he still doesn't hate them. Bakugou secretly enjoys going to arcades with them, or playing games in Denki's room. Boy still gets angry or competitive, but they aren't getting scared or uncomfortable. It feels like they are enjoying it actually. That may be a little bit lightheaded of them, but who cares? Bakugou looked at new messages appearing on the screen, when Mina's sudden question, directed to him, caught Boy's attention. Will I go? Blonde chuckled again. Hell nah. Bakugou sent a quick, not going, and wanted to return to his book, when Denki started nagging him, asking to go. Bakugou managed to quickly shut him up, looking pleased with the result, when a reply from a certain red-haired boy popped up. You think I'll agree just because he asks me to? Boy chuckled and refused again. What he didn't think of was that Kirishima has always been stubborn about Bakugou tagging along with them, which unexpectedly had a big effect on the blonde. And yet again, he found himself agreeing to go. TCH, fucking hair for brains, he scoffed, with his cheeks turning light pink. Bakugou switched off the phone and tossed it on the bed by his side. Boy switched his attention to the book again, but didn't have time to read even a page before his phone buzzed again. Bakugou threw a quick glance in its direction. 2 new messages from Shitty Hair. Thank you, it'll be fun. I promise. Bakugou felt his cheeks burning as his lips curved in a slight smile at the text. Boy was attentive enough to see other people's attitude towards him. But unfortunately Blonde couldn't notice his best friend's feelings. Which was definitely weird, since anyone who has seen Kirishima being with Bakugou at least once could tell how obvious red-haired boy is. He returned to the page he was reading in a failed attempt to concentrate again. Words were turning into unreadable smudges and sentences didn't make any sense. Of course his best friend's texts couldn't leave his head so easily. A wave of thoughts hit explosive Blonde's head. Kirishima's bright smile appeared before his eyes. Boy's sparkling crimson eyes, red strands of put-down hair, framing his face, light chuckle that Bakugou loved so much. Love. Blonde eagerly shook his head to throw away these absurd thoughts. Future #1 hero can't think of something like this. Book fell from his hands as he covered flushed face, trying to convince himself. However, unpleasant thought managed to get through his defense. It's nothing more than friendship for him anyway. Bakugou sighed heavily, eyes dropping to the fallen book. Blonde couldn't blame himself completely for thinking this way. He knew he shouldn't think about it. He shouldn't confuse kindness with love. Kirishima was an outgoing type of person, who was nice and kind towards everyone. It almost seemed like he could compliment and befriend every single person passing him on the street or at school. If he would eventually fall in love with someone, then no one could notice. It takes only several looks at his friendship with Mina, Deku or 𝗧𝗧𝗧 to understand that. Were these real reasons for Bakugou to hide his feelings deep inside? Maybe, but he himself explained it in a different way, which was one of the correct ones. And that reason was his pride. Blonde was constantly reminded of his main goal, being a #1 hero. And future #1 hero couldn't let himself get distracted by useless feelings like affection. Bakugou sighed, massaging his temples. He needed a distraction. And he needed it now. Bakugou lazily stood up. There was no way he could continue reading at this point. Boy shoved his phone into the pocket of baggy sweatpants and stretched his stiff back. Bakugou came up to the mirror. I just wanted to have a normal day, Boy sighed heavily, throwing on a scarlet hoodie that he borrowed last week from Kirishima. It felt a little big for him, but he didn't mind. Blonde's one tore at the sleeve from a blast he made to scare Denki. That's why he had no choice but to borrow one from his best friend, who loved hoodies a little too much. Bakugou promised to return it right after he'll buy a new one for himself, which he did the next day. But he was forgetting to give it back since then. Well, more precisely will be to say that Bakugou wasn't really willing to give it back. But of course he would never admit it. Kirishima didn't remind him about it, even though Scarlet Hoodie was his favorite one. So Blonde just kept it for a little more. Bakugou slipped into his black sneakers, running his fingers through his thick hair. He wasn't looking forward for this evening, but since he didn't have anything better to do, it seemed like a decent idea. Boy walked out of the room and came up to Kirishima's door, raising his fist to knock lightly on it. However, his hand stopped midway. To think of it, I've never came to him first. Would he be happy about it? Bakugou looked at his own door, just several feet away from his friend's one. He was always the one coming to me. Boy smiled at the thought. However, the moment later Blonde came to his senses and eagerly shook his head. What the hell? Bakugou spun around on his heels and headed down to the common room. Damn it. This wasn't the best way to start his weekend for sure. Sudden familiar chuckling stopped him on the stairs. Kirishima walked in the common room with Midoriya by his side. An unfamiliar feeling stung Blonde's chest. This damn nerd. Bakugou rolled his eyes and glared at the green-haired boy. It wasn't exactly Midoriya's fault for causing this kind of Blonde's reaction. It was the sight of him and Kirishima laughing together. Bakugou suddenly felt an urge to come up and take his best friend away. But at the same time he couldn't move an inch. Blonde looked at Midoriya lightly hitting Kirishima on the shoulder. Probably telling him another funny story of his. He let out a quiet growl. Bakugou's eyes got fixated on Kirishima, on the side of his lips stretching in a wide grin, showing his pointy teeth. Unique. Handsome. Oi, Kirishima, Denki's voice snapped Bakugou out of his thoughts. We looked for you all morning. He appeared out of nowhere, running towards the boy and immediately jumping onto his back. Hi, Midoriya, what's up? Get off me, man, you're heavy. Kirishima giggled and tried to shake his friend off, but boy only hugged him harder. Rude. Denki chuckled, making tiny sparks of electricity run through Kirishima's torso. He has already practiced enough to not let out 2 million volts every single time, activating his quirk. He learned to feel the exact amount of charge he has to give in every specific situation to not hurt anyone. It tickles. Kirishima laughed loudly, covering his waist with hands. Stop it. He felt sparks running through his body, making him feel funny. Midoriya watched them, giggling and taking pictures. Kirishima's eyes sparkled with joy as he ruffled Denki's hair. The way Bakugou loved to see him the most. Him being happy. Him enjoying the moment. Blonde suddenly felt sparks crackling in his palms and clenched his fists. This unknown feeling boiling in his veins. Something he couldn't name or recognize. Blonde squeezed his eyes shut and turned around, deciding to go back and change for a run. He needed time for himself more than anything right now. Bakugou came running into the bathroom, slamming the door behind him. He turned on cold water and splashed it all over his face. These useless emotions, fuck. Bakugou let out a shaky breath, feeling water slowly cooling him down. Boy groaned and squeezed the edge of the sink, till his knuckles turned white. Bakugou looked at his reflection in the mirror. Lost look in the eyes, water dripping down his face, messy hair. You're gonna be a #1 hero. Get yourself fucking together. Bakugou grit his teeth and came out of the bathroom. He quickly got to his room and changed into comfortable loose top. Blonde tugged his headphones in. He needed fresh air. Bakugou doesn't remember how he managed to get out unnoticed by any of his 4 morons, when everyone was already fully awake and wandering around the dorms, but he definitely felt lucky about it. Blonde stepped outside and inhaled cool air, relaxing his body and clearing his mind. Soft wind brushed Boy's cheeks, making him forget about every single thing around him. Bakugou turned on the music. Beats of the playing song traveled through his mind, making him hum its melody and letting him feel free from today's events. Boy walked down to the start of his running route. He looked into the peaceful scenery for a minute, before stretching his muscles. Every blow of the wind made his body shiver. However, Boy didn't feel cold. He loved this pleasant sensation. Bakugou steadied his breath and started jogging, gradually picking up the pace. Just in a few minutes he lost Yua out of his sight and got carried away by created peacefulness around him. Oi, Kirishima. We looked for you all morning. Denki appeared out of nowhere, running towards the boy and immediately jumping onto his back. Hi, Midoriya, what's up? Get off me, man, you're heavy. Kirishima giggled and tried to shake his friend off, but Boy only hugged him harder. Rude. Denki chuckled, making tiny sparks of electricity run through Kirishima's torso. It tickles, Kirishima laughed, covering his waist with hands. Stop it. Boy could easily harden to stop the funny feeling, but he wanted to let his friends have a joyful moment. He loved seeing them happy. He loved seeing them smile and laugh. So he went on with the play. I'll make 𝗧𝗏 tape you to the ceiling, Kirishima chuckled, trying to shake Denki off his back. Tape who? And why? 𝗧𝗏 walked into the room, stretching his arms and yawning. Boy saw Denki mocking Kirishima, with Midoriya filming all happening chaos. Green-haired Boy turned to look at the classmate and greeted him with a bright smile, accompanied by another Kirishima's loud laughter. No explanation needed, 𝗧𝗏 giggled and rolled his eyes, coming closer to them. Boy took Denki by the waist and tickled him just in the right place for the blonde to let go of Kirishima's hoodie and flop on the floor with a loud thud. Unfair, Denki cried out and pulled 𝗧𝗏 by his pants. Boy was still too sleepy to react, so he lost his balance and fell on the ground beside his friend. Every hero has a sidekick, coming right on time, Kirishima giggled with a wide toothy grin. He finger-gunned, teasing Denki and making him pout. Did you forget? Suddenly he felt a tape stuck to his leg, pulling him down. Huh, was the only sound Kirishima could let out, before joining his friends on the floor. Who did you call a sidekick? 𝗧𝗏 grinned, looking at Kirishima rubbing his shoulder after the fall. It didn't hurt, but Boy definitely needed to put on an act. Don't you dare call me that again. Boy stuck him to the floor with another stripe of tape. It wasn't hard for Kirishima to tear tape apart, considering his quirk, but it would ruin all the fun. Midoriya managed to take a few pictures, saving them for later, before getting pulled by his jacket and crashing onto his classmates. Did you think you can get away with evidence of this crime? Denki fished Midoriya's phone from Boy's hands, swinging it above his head and sticking his tongue out. Loud laughter filled the dorms yet again, and, of course, couldn't be unnoticed by others. Seriously, 𝗧𝗏 chuckled. On Saturday morning, he walked by 4 boys, failing at their attempts to get up. Ojiro tried to keep his tail away from them, to not get accidentally involved in whatever was going on. Midoriya raised his hand, sticking his index finger up. Technically, it's afternoon already, before rolling away and sitting up on the floor, what made his head spin. He giggled at the feeling and tried to caught onto something to stop it. Midoriya shook his head and looked up. Suddenly he froze on the place as a certain half-red half-white hair caught his attention. Todoroki? Boy blinked fast to make sure his eyes weren't deceiving him. And he was right. Todoroki was looking at him with a soft smile playing on his lips. Midoriya perfectly knew how he looked at that exact moment. His green hair all messed up, cheeks burning red, clothes looking as if he just fell from a tree and rolled off a hill into dorm doors. However, Todoroki still smiled at him. It made Midoriya's lips stretch in a bright, toothy smile. He couldn't believe that this evening Todoroki might finally be his. "Oi, Midoriya," Boy snapped out of his thoughts when heard Kirishima calling him. "Could you help me a little?" Boy bobbed his head in Sero's and Denki's direction, who now were playfully fighting, using their quirks and getting dangerously close to the TV. They didn't seem to realize it, but one careless move and TV would fall, and Kirishima definitely didn't feel like getting a lecture from Aizawa. "Sure." Midoriya sprung up and ran up to their friends, trying to calm them down. It wouldn't be so hard if they weren't using quirks. However, they were, so it took some time. Eventually, dorms went silent and peaceful again. Denki and Sero still quietly giggled, but none of them wanted to start play fighting again. Boys sat down with their heads thrown back, trying to catch a breath, while Kirishima and Midoriya went up to their rooms. Kirishima slowly closed the door behind him. He let out a deep sigh and checked the time. Almost 1 p.m. "I still have a lot of hours ahead." Boy came up to his desk and ran fingers on top of lying stack of notebooks. "We didn't finish studying yesterday," he mumbled, sitting down on his chair. "What will happen today?" Kirishima reflexively opened his math notebook, where Bakugou highlighted different parts for him to focus on. "Will you accept my feelings? I'll take any answer, but please give a proper one." He tangled red hair strands in between his fingers, closing his eyes and trying to get himself together. Boy needed a distraction, since at this rate, he's going to lose his mind. Kirishima turned pages over and found a math problem, which Bakugou tried to explain yesterday. He took a nearby lying pen. "If I need to use this formula here," he thought, sliding the pen through different numbers, "I have to take." Kirishima's eyes were focusing on highlighted parts, putting them together into something that looked more as what he needed to do. "This might be right," he exclaimed, after getting first problem solved, his lips curving into a smile. Kirishima sat in his room, working onto his homework with minutes passing by. On one hand, he still was thinking about his best friend, wanting to show Bakugou that he's not a lost cause at math. On the other, Boy was successfully distracting himself, which was the best thing for him now. His thoughts were occupied by studying, not letting any worries disturb Boy's perfect concentration. Well, it still wasn't exactly perfect. However, Kirishima couldn't recall last time he was studying so hard and especially alone. "All done," Kirishima said proudly and closed the notebook. "It's much easier than I thought." Boy chuckled and checked his phone, where several messages from Bakasquad group chat were seen. Mina was calling boys to hang out in Denki's room and play games. Bakugou surprisingly agreed too, which made Kirishima feel a bit jealous. Maybe I should have gone hang out with them instead. A deep sigh left Boy's lips. He wanted to see Bakugou, but not with others being around. Kirishima wished he could take Blonde somewhere, where Bakugou will feel comfortable. Boy wanted to see him smile, not an evil one after another win, not a grin before fight, or after teasing someone again. Kirishima wanted to see Bakugou being sincerely happy, what no one had seen before. However, for now Kirishima could only let Bakugou take his time with others. "Maybe leaving my notebook in his room will make him feel proud of himself," he said quietly. "It's not much, but maybe it'll make him smile." Kirishima felt his cheeks burn at the thought, and shook his head to chase away the picture of Bakugou's handsome face. Boy took a piece of paper and made a note for his favorite explosive blonde. "It may not be completely right, but I tried as you taught me." Kirishima sticked the note on the cover of the notebook and smiled. Was a heart. Too much? But maybe, just maybe, it'll make him smile at least a little bit. Kirishima knew that, when Bakugou was staying in dorms, he wasn't closing the door. However, Blonde made it clear only to his best friend. That's why Kirishima stood up and walked up to Bakugou's room without any hesitation, taking the notebook with him. He looked around so no one would see him sneaking around in others' rooms, and eventually opened the door. Boy didn't want to take much time and accidentally make Bakugou uncomfortable with his presence, in case Blonde would show up earlier. Kirishima walked up to the desk and gently put his notebook on it. He breathed in the bittersweet scent of the air and quietly left the room right after, smiling softly into the empty hallway. Kirishima slowly slid down his dorm door as it closed behind him. Still feeling bittersweet scent of Bakugou's perfume, he threw his head back. A quiet thud, followed by a deep sigh, echoed in a small room. Blonde's scent was calming, But at the same time, it made Kirishima's heart beat faster. It made boy feel like home. I'm going crazy. Kirishima's eyes flattered shut. He imagined being alone with Bakugou in Blonde's room. However, this time it wasn't for studying or practicing. Boy imagined them sitting on the bed with his head on Bakugou's shoulder as they watched a movie together. Some kind of a silly comedy that Kirishima found yet again and forced Blonde to watch it, even though he knew Bakugou doesn't like them too much. A light blush appeared on his cheeks as boy smirked. Yes, I definitely am going crazy. He chuckled quietly. Suddenly the door opened, making Kirishima fall back into the hallway. What the H? Boy was about to start whining from hitting his head on the floor, but stopped right after opening his eyes. Mina stood above him with a look of concern and surprise. Boy rubbed the back of his now a little bit hurting neck. Hi. Kirishima gave her the most awkward smile and slowly stood up. Should I ask? Mina arched an eyebrow, still looking a little bit bewildered. Better don't. Boy chuckled and invited her in his room with a slight wave of the hand. Mina took a couple of seconds to process what just happened, before entering and sitting down on the chair beside Kirishima's desk. Did something happen? She asked, following movements of her friend with examining eyes. Something seemed off about him, but she couldn't guess what exactly. Boy never was a type who would worry others with his thoughts or problems, even severe ones. Kirishima tended to solve everything what was bothering him by himself since middle school. You haven't answered your phone and didn't come hanging out with us. She made a pause, watching Kirishima sit down on the floor in front of her, leaning onto the bed with his back. You haven't even heard me knocking on the door. Kirishima visibly hesitated for a moment, fidgeting with his fingers. Was studying. This excuse would have made everyone, who knew boy well enough, laugh. He definitely wasn't the type to study alone on the weekend. Kirishima looked at Mina, now holding her laugh back. You and studying on Saturday morning. Loud laughter eventually escaped her lips. Sorry, Kiri, but you could think of a better excuse. Boy pouted jokingly. I wouldn't believe that either. Kirishima made the most honest look he could and said quietly. But I really did. I've decided to finish that homework that I started yesterday at 𝗏𝗃. My notebook is in his room. A wave of warmth ran through Kirishima's body, remembering the note he left on the notebook. But what if Mina asked to show it? I don't want to come up with another lie. Only he knew that Bakugou's room was always kept open while he stayed in the dorms. Blonde did so for Kirishima to have a quick and easy access to all his notes or other stuff, instead of him running around the dorms and annoying Bakugou by looking for him every time he needed something, while he himself was busy with cooking, laundry, or just being around others. Other classmates, though, never needed nor dared to open Bakugou's room without his permission, especially if they knew that explosive blonde wasn't there. To tell the truth, they even tried to avoid knocking on his door in case he was in a bad mood or just busy. For now, no one had a death wish or will to get blown into the wall. It was Bakugou's and Kirishima's little secret from others that they've never intended to reveal. She doesn't have to know. Mina tilted her head in confusion of a sudden silence. She squinted her eyes, trying to catch every emotion going through Kirishima's face. Girl expected him to try and hide them, while making up a more believable story. However, boy did the opposite. Mina could see so many feelings piling up inside him that it confused her even more. Hello? Mina chuckled nervously. Earth to Kiri. Are you there? Girl came closer and waved her hand right before his eyes. Huh? Boy blinked a few times before looking at her, a little bit stunned by the sudden movement. Sorry, spaced out a little. Kirishima gave Mina an apologetic smile. Well, I needed a distraction from all these thoughts about this evening, he said, pointing at his head and making circle motions with an index finger. So decided to study a little bit, but seems like got carried away anyway. Boy bit his lip and started playing with the hem of his hoodie in attempt to avoid Mina's eyes. Please believe me. Kiri. Her voice sounded soft, calming. Are you still scared about losing him completely? Kirishima nodded and met girl's eyes. He's even more than just a best friend to me after all. I know. Mina gently put her hand on his shoulder. But you can't hide your feelings forever. Her lips stretched in an encouraging smile, while her fingers lightly brushed boy's hoodie. Even if Bakugou will throw a tantrum as usual, she chuckled, we will be there to help. But what if he won't practice or talk to me anymore? What's then? Kirishima's voice cracked at the thought. How will you be able to help? No one can affect Bakugou's emotions nor decisions. What if? Questions were escaping Kirishima's lips one after another with his voice shaking dangerously. What if I'll never bring that friendship back? Boy hated showing his vulnerable side to others. However, Mina knew him better than anyone. He couldn't hide anything from her, nor pretend like he's all right. Which, he was thankful, Mina kept in secret from others. We'll do our best to bring your friendship back together then, she smiled softly, making Kirishima calm down. We'll talk to Bakugou or make a plan. We aren't called 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝐻 for nothing. Kirishima looked in her eyes and smiled back. Thank you, Mina. He was still worried, but definitely not scared of the outcome anymore. I'm not alone, so it should be all right. Thank you for having my back. Boy rubbed the back of his neck. And we always will. Mina stood up and proudly stretched out her hand to Kirishima, clenching it into a fist. Boy bumped his own fist on it and grinned. That's my boy. Girl jumped up in excitement. Now we have to get you ready. She looked around the room. Have you talked with Midoriya about it? Mina asked, already on her way to Kirishima's closet. Do you need some professional help with it? She winked and giggled. Kirishima stood up as well. We agreed on classic shirts for sure, so it would look more like a serious love confession. But the rest is up to me to decide. Well, I'm glad you've decided not to go in hoodies. Mina laughed and opened the closet. Let's see what we can do. Her eyes quickly examined all shelves and hangers. Then girl quickly glanced at slightly confused Kirishima before turning back to the closet. 𝗬𝗲𝗏, boy wanted to come closer, when Mina stopped him. Stay still, I'm thinking. She took black pants with a white shirt and looked at Kirishima again. Put your hair up for a sec, Mina asked and came closer to the boy. He nodded and did what girl said, sliding fingers through his thick hair and holding them up. It didn't look exactly how they're always styled, but it was better than nothing. Mina put clothes in front of his body and clicked her tongue. Nah, let your hair back down. Kirishima sighed and let his hair fall down. What was that sigh about? Mina pouted playfully. I'm trying to help you here. Boy laughed, but didn't have a chance to say a word, before she continued. We need something more casual. She threw pants on the bed and returned to the open closet. Girl pulled out black ripped jeans. We're talking about Bakugou after all. Mina winked, giving clothes to Kirishima. Here, change into this. Can you? Boy made a sign for Mina to turn around with his hand. Please? Girl giggled, then nodded and waited for a bit, looking at the wall. Kirishima quickly changed, throwing his clothes onto the bed. And who's gonna clean all the mess we're making? Boy rolled his eyes with a smile. So, how is it? Asked Kirishima, making girl look at him. Mina stood still for a second before tilting her head. Take off the shirt, she commanded before turning back around to grab a black one from the closet. This will look better, she said, handing Kirishima another piece of clothing. Boy quickly tried it on and tucked it into jeans. Better? Wait a second, Mina came up to him, rolled up sleeves a little bit and unbuttoned a couple of last buttons of the shirt, making it slightly expose one shoulder and Kirishima's defined collarbones. He'll love it, she winked with a smirk playing on her lips. Boy blushed and covered his face with hands. Put on your maroon sneakers and those silver watches you have. Let's see how it'll look all together. While Mina was picking clothes from the bed and putting them back into the closet, folding neatly, Kirishima jumped into his favorite sneakers and took out his watches from the shelf. He came back to Mina a couple of moments later, and after checking his outfit, she spun Boy around with a grin. So he faced the mirror. All done. Boy's ears turned red from the thought of Bakugou's possible reaction. Kirishima wasn't the type to dress like this every day, so he doubted that Blonde had seen him like this before. Kirishima rubbed the back of his neck, looking at Mina with visibly pink cheeks. You sure he'll love it? Do you really need to ask? She hit him on the shoulder. Of course he will. Simple, but perfect. Well, if you say so. Kirishima smiled and bit his lower lip. He brushed his hair and fixed the shirt. It was different from what he expected to look like, but Boy definitely liked this outfit better. And what would I do without her? He chuckled softly at now pleased-looking Mina. Buzzing of girl's phone made both of them remember about the time. It's Denki, she grinned at the boy. Ready to go? Kirishima nodded. He looked into the mirror once more, before heading out of the room. It's today or never, he thought and closed the door behind him. TCH, do I really have to go? Bakugou grumbled, looking over in Denki's direction. However, only a low hum came as reply. Boy was too concentrated on texting someone, grimacing every now and then at the screen. Probably planning another dumb shit. Blonde rolled his eyes and sighed heavily. He felt as if these idiots were up to something with all this sudden karaoke thing, but had no idea what it could be. They've never spent so much time on their phones outside of that Bakugou chat of theirs before. What was even worse, Kirishima suddenly started hanging out with Midoriya much more now. He was skipping their hangouts and staying late at school, waiting for the green-haired boy. This damn nerd. Bakugou let out an annoyed grunt. Oi, dunce face. Tell those two idiots to hurry up, or I'm fucking leaving. Dude, relax, it'll be fun, 𝗧𝗏 replied instead, with a sly smirk playing on his lips. Trust me. Trust my ass, Blonde scowled. I'm going only because y'all would annoy me to death if I didn't. Boy leaned on the wall behind him and pulled his phone out. Why are they so invested in it anyway? Acting as if it's such a big deal. Morons. He scrolled through their chat to see if he missed something. Tons of jokes and weird memes that weren't even that funny. Nothing out of the ordinary though, except lack of activity in the last days. Bakugou furrowed his eyebrows. He didn't like the feeling this whole situation was giving him. Sorry to keep you waiting, guys. Mina's voice sounded pleased and over-energetic. Yay, sorry. Kirishima shyly walked out from behind the girl, rubbing the back of his neck. He gave an apologetic smile to his friends and chuckled nervously. Oh my god. Kirishima. Denki's eyes widened. Mina surely did a great job this time. 𝗧𝗏 arched an eyebrow, lips curving in a pleased smirk. Boy winked at the girl, making her grin grow wider. Bakugou jerked his head up, looking for the cause of all this excitement. The second boy's eyes found Kirishima. He froze on the place, phone almost falling out of his hand. Blonde tilted his head in visible confusion and blinked a few times, making sure his eyes weren't fooling him. What the fuck? His eyes widened. Bakugou. 𝗧𝗏 looked at the stunned blonde. Ready to go, he chuckled lightly. Bakugou didn't hear a thing as his eyes were discovering Kirishima from head to toe. How badass but simple his all-outfit looked, bringing out bright red color of his sneakers and hair. How his black shirt fell down his shoulder, exposing Boy's defined collarbones and slender neck. How neatly its sleeves were rolled up and silver watch embellished his wrist. How his hair was put down, perfectly framing Boy's face. There's no way in hell, this is the Kirishima I know. Blonde felt his cheeks heat up and heart starting to race. Bakugou. Kirishima's voice sounded tender and timid. Boy met Kirishima's eyes. They were shining more than any day before. Blonde felt as if life slowed down just for this exact moment. Just for him to get lost in this deep crimson color. Kirishima gently tugged a fallen hair strand behind his ear, his lips curving in a shy smile. His eyes starting to wander nervously everywhere, but Bakugou, Boy's cheeks taking a slight pink shade. Blonde knew he was openly staring. He knew everyone noticed it. He knew it'll get him in trouble. And yet he couldn't bring himself to look away. Now his one and only trouble was his unnecessarily handsome best friend. Bakugou swallowed soundly. Looking decent at least once, huh? Shitty hair? Blonde made a lame excuse of a smirk, before turning away to hide his burning cheeks. Hurry up, we're already running late. Mina lightly elbowed Kirishima, whose cheeks now were as red as his hair, and mouth told ya he'll love it. Boy only covered his flushed face with hands in a silent reply. Everyone followed Bakugou out of the dorms, quietly chuckling behind him. All the way to karaoke. Blonde didn't turn even once to look at laughing idiots. He got unusually quiet, and only red tips of his ears gave out his true feelings. Bakugou desperately tried to hide all signs of his blush and stuttering voice. So he decided to take the easiest way, not talk at all till he'll manage to calm down. These fucking emotions. So lame of a upcoming pro hero. Blonde's ambitions got into a serious confrontation with his feelings. He hated useless feelings such as attraction. It was making people weak and submissive, while he aimed to be at the top and do his best. Attraction. More like a complete bullshit. He's just looking good, and that's all. But right when Bakugou thought he found a distraction, Denki called him. Oi, Kakin, Boy smirked. What are you so quiet for? TCH, shut up, dunce face, Bakugou growled, turning around. However, the sight of Kirishima made him immediately spun back and shut up, causing his cheeks lit up yet again. Another wave of laughter from his friends washed over the street. Idiots, he muttered quietly to himself. Get yourself together. You're Bakugou fucking Katsuki. Blonde squeezed his eyes shut in attempt to not think about how hard it'll be to survive this evening. Singing extras. Dancing more. Loud annoying music. Nagging of these idiots. And Kirishima. What does he even had to dress up for? It's not like today is a special occasion or anything. However, a tiny bit of an unfamiliar feeling slightly thumped Bakugou's chest. Interest? Anticipation? No. He couldn't get what it exactly was. However, Boy was sure he might have felt it before. Then a different thought occurred. Was it hope? It felt as a close guess, but at the same time, it confused Blonde even more. If it really was hope, then for what? For Kirishima getting all dressed up and trying on a completely different style from his everyday one, which was surprisingly close to what Blonde liked, only for him. And there it was. Another thump that made Bakugou's heart race. Boy's mind and ambitions told him Kirishima would never do this, and these thoughts being a complete nonsense for someone who wants to be a #1 hero. However, no matter what Blonde was telling himself, how hard his self-convincing was, hope still stayed. It stayed. Somewhere deep. Somewhere for no one to be able to reach it. Somewhere even Blonde himself found it hard to feel. Finally, they entered the karaoke. Everyone was already there, talking, laughing, singing. Bakugou's gaze started wandering all around the room when it suddenly stopped at Midoriya. Blonde squinted his eyes in confusion. All his thoughts shattered as he saw green-haired Boy standing near Ida all dressed up. Deku. Why the hell this nerd got all dressed up too? His style choice was different from Kirishima's. It was more gentle and humble. But it served for the same reason for sure. Bakugou's previous confusion grew into suspicion. There was too much of a possibility of them having planned something together for this evening. And he felt that'll definitely be something dumb or annoying. Boy eagerly shook his head to chase all weird thoughts away. Hey, you okay? Bakugou felt a hand lie on his shoulder. Boy turned his head, noticing Kirishima smiling softly at him. Blonde felt his cheeks burn yet again, while nodding slightly. I promised that it'll be fun, remember? His voice sounded full of joy and anticipation. Trust me, it'll be so. Bakugou shrugged. What Boy took as his usual whatever, and they came in. Blonde sat down in the corner, watching everyone get hyped about Midoriya and Kirishima coming all dressed up and exchanging looks every 2 seconds. Something stung Bakugou's heart. It felt so wrong, seeing his best friend hang out around that nerd instead of Blonde himself. However, for a social butterfly as Kirishima, it was nothing special. He probably didn't even consider Bakugou as someone more important than others. Boy most likely thought of him as another ordinary friend of his, which he had too many of. And there it was, another sting at Bakugou's heart. Huh. Bakugou furrowed his eyebrows and threw his head back. Fucking gross. As time passed by, Blonde was getting more and more bored. He always found it weird that everyone was so excited to show off their lame singing. And today wasn't an exception. Girls taking pics and guys throwing dumb jokes here and there. Loud music and big party. Everything was exactly the opposite way of what Bakugou liked. And Kirishima knew it perfectly, but still asked him to come. Sure, Blonde could refuse, but something made him agree. So now he was here. Eyes wandering around and him waiting for something that his best friend promised to be fun. Boy's attention got concentrated all over Kirishima every time he passed by or sang. His eyes were shining with happiness with his lips stretched in a bright toothy smile. It felt like a joke that a person like Kirishima would spend so much of his time with someone like Bakugou out of his own will. They were two opposite people, having only a little bit in common. In addition to that, Bakugou wasn't exactly one of the easiest people to be around. However, even now, while singing or talking with others, his friend managed to give a soft smile to Bakugou, coming up to him every now and then. His eyes held a mysterious spark in them, pleading for the blonde not to leave yet. That's why Bakugou was still here, still waiting for what to come. And it eventually started. Blonde saw Mina ran up to Kirishima and Midoriya, telling them something with a smirk on her lips. Midoriya's cheeks lit up while Kirishima started fidgeting his fingers. Girl chuckled and gently petted them on shoulders. She threw another phrase that Bakugou couldn't hear, and boys nodded, exchanging nervous looks. Mina walked up to Todoroki right after, pointing to the different seat. What the hell is this all about? Blonde bit his lip, getting lost in countless guesses. Bakugou. Denki waved his hand in front of Bakugou's eyes. Huh? Blonde looked up. What now, Sparky? Come sit closer. Boy gestured to his right and winked. Just for now. I guess this is what shitty hair talked about. Bakugou let out an annoyed sigh, but did as was told. Well, let's see how it goes. He chuckled lightly, lips curving in a smirk. Mina walked up to the boys with a sly smile playing on her lips. She threw arms around their shoulders. I'm almost jealous of you, she giggled and sang out. Our lover boys. Kirishima sighed. He heard it too many times for his embarrassment to slowly grow into frustration. Boy's fingers fidgeted the hem of his black shirt. Will it really work? Mina clicked her tongue, making Kirishima look at her. You're not gonna chicken out now, are you? She arched an eyebrow. Kirishima chuckled lightly. It wouldn't be manly. But even though he said it out loud, he felt an unbearable desire to run away. If Mina hasn't been acting all serious and sure about Bakugou having feelings for him, Kirishima would stay in dorms, probably watching a movie. Boy was fine with keeping his feelings secret and safe from explosive blonde. It was much better than losing his closest friend. Especially when no one could guess what reaction will Kirishima get from a sudden love confession. It's Bakugou after all. Boy could get a hug or scent flying across the city. Either way is better if after that blonde would stay by his side, even as just a friend. Kirishima needed to keep that confident smile on for his friends. He wasn't planning all that by himself after all, and he had to believe it'll work out the best possible way. Kirishima knew how well Mina could read through his facade, but he knew how she won't say anything with others around even better. However, it didn't mean that he won't get hundreds of texts or lectures later. Kirishima felt emotionally drained for past few weeks, listening to Mina's nagging after every his failed attempt to talk to Bakugou about his feelings, reading hundreds of her texts with new ideas that were supposed to help him in his messed up love life. And after all that, he's here, in karaoke. Keeping a bright smile on was much harder than it was before. If Mina and others were right and Kirishima was that oblivious to not notice his best friend's feelings, then this evening might become the best one in his entire life. But what if they weren't? He felt his chest tighten. All this work will be done for nothing. Or even worse. That's my boy. Mina's voice brought Kirishima back to reality. She read through him, knew he was scared, but her eyes were saying, I believe in you. Now girl only had to do her best for keeping both of their spirits up. And she knew exactly what to do. Mina's lips stretched in a pleased grin, and she ruffled his hair. You owe me lots of snacks later. Oi, stop, Kirishima chuckled and brushed away her hand. Relax, she whispered and gave him a wink, before turning to Midoriya. What about you? Ready? His eyes widened. Now? He glanced at Kirishima. Boy nodded with a wide grin and Midoriya's cheeks lit up. He thought all possible outcomes through multiple times, trying to find solutions for the worst ones. Was that too much? He thought about that too, but thoughts kept on flooding his head. Midoriya returned a light smile and glanced at Todoroki. Boy was talking to Uraraka. She smiled widely, gesturing emotionally here and there. Girl stood on tiptoes and whispered something, giggling and pointing to a place not far from Bakugou. Midoriya saw Todoroki nodding, visibly confused. Right, girls already took care of everything, he mumbled to himself and sighed in defeat. They'll have to do it. Now. Midoriya? Mina called Boy softly, attracting his attention. It's gonna be all right, she smiled, patting him on the back. Her eyes traveled through the room and stopped at Todoroki. Mina was silent for a few moments and added quietly, after all, you're the one who doesn't need to worry about anything. Midoriya bit his lower lip. It was true, Todoroki was much more predictable and easier to deal with than Bakugou. And if everyone was right about him, then Boy truly didn't have anything to worry about. Although Midoriya felt like Mina didn't mean to let him hear that brief thought of hers. When girl turned back to him, Midoriya smiled. Yay, it will, he replied shortly, not mentioning the last thing she said. Now go and get your man all ready, she chuckled, shoving 2 microphones into their hands. Boys threw a couple of jokes, earning light kicks on their backs. They chuckled and walked off. Kirishima watched her calling up Uraraka and openly giggling about something that he definitely didn't want to know. Boy took a deep breath, calming his nerves down. You got it. Be manly. He stopped and turned to Midoriya. Today, Kirishima smirked and stretched out a fist. Together. Midoriya saw a spark in Boy's eyes and smiled back. Let's do it. Boys bumped their fists together and nodded to the girls, who were waiting for them to get ready. They made their way in front of Todoroki and Bakugou, trying not to lose all their confidence here and now. Kirishima glanced at explosive blonde and gave him a shy smile. For his pure surprise, he didn't look displeased or that he wanted to leave. Bakugou tilted his head in confusion, arching an eyebrow. I bet he thought, what the fucking hell? Just now, Kirishima snickered and looked at Midoriya. Boy's cheeks were redder than ever and eyes darted every possible direction, but Todoroki. We're a mess. Kirishima bumped him lightly on a shoulder, and mouths were screwed, making both of them laugh. Yay you! Boys heard Uraraka and Mina scream and Somebody to You started playing. Familiar upbeat melody made them relax. Kirishima looked at Mina smiling brightly. She swung her arm around Denki's shoulders and screamed, yeah, you, again, both of them pointing at him. A wave of warmth washed over Kirishima, No one knew the outcome of this, but they made it feel like something wonderful was coming. 𝗧𝗏 stood beside them, chuckling at two already celebrating idiots. They all were always there for Kirishima, always hyping him up, and today wasn't an exception. Kirishima grinned widely at his friends and sang first lines. He wasn't the best singer for sure, but spent countless hours singing in his room before. Bakugou often teased him for that, but never mentioned Kirishima's singing being bad. Boy smiled at the thought and felt another little boost of confidence. He looked at Midoriya, swinging his hips lightly and bobbing his head to the music, waiting for his turn. Kirishima could tell he was enjoying the moment. His smile grew wider. He wasn't the only one feeling it. He wasn't alone. Midoriya grinned at him and took over the next part of the song. And then you caught my eye, he sang, eyes sliding from his friends to Todoroki. Kirishima took a free moment to glance at Bakugou. His heart thumped in his chest, cheeks burning. Everything felt surreal. Kirishima's eyes found Blonde's once. If there were any doubts about his decision before, now they all disappeared, drowned in that beautiful bright red color. Kirishima's sight traveled from Bakugou's eyes to his lips, neck, chest. He wished every part of explosive blonde could be his. And now he had a chance to make this wish come true. Kirishima slid a hand through his messy hair, eyes sparkling with joy. Look at me now, I'm falling. He sang, with all feelings kept secret for months, finally finding their escape, making him feel weightless. Closing his eyes, Kirishima let his voice flow free. One verse after another, boys enjoyed this evening. It was their evening. Everyone sang with them, dancing and clapping to the beat. Boys looked at each other, eyes shining with pure joy and excitement. The moment was coming. The moment they waited for. They should feel scared or unsure, but they don't. Singing made them relax and go with what their body was telling them. Midoriya gave Kirishima a wide smile and finished his last line. They heard girls scream, now. We're gonna do it. Pride filled Kirishima's chest. A few more seconds, and he will lift this heavy feeling off his shoulders. Feeling of keeping his own feelings in secret for months. Boys smiled brightly at their friends and met Todoroki's and Bakugou's eyes, hearts beating faster and faster. They let air fill their lungs and emotions run through their mind. 'Cause all I wanna be, yeah, all I ever wanna be is somebody to you. They sang out together and pointed at bemused boys in front of them, giving them toothy grins. We did it. Boys heard everyone clapping and whistling. They steadied their breath for a second and gave each other a high five. Good luck to us, Kirishima mouthed, putting down his microphone. He cleared his throat and made his way to Bakugou. Midoriya nodded and followed his movements, coming up to Todoroki. Todoroki usually wasn't the type to show many emotions, but now boys' cheeks burned red, eyes darting all over Midoriya. Midoriya stopped right in front of him, sitting down on one knee. It looked silly, but boys didn't come up with anything better. Well, better than nothing, as Mina addressed it. Midoriya let out a quiet nervous chuckle. With every second, realization of what he was going to say filled his head, anxiety running through his body. He exhaled, cooling his mind, and met Todoroki's eyes. Those beautiful eyes. Midoriya slowly reached out his hand. I like you, Todoroki, he said softly, feeling his cheeks burn. Boy's heart was running laps inside his chest. Midoriya saw Todoroki's eyes sparkle as Boy gently took his hand and pulled both of them up. He lightly squeezed Midoriya's hand and smiled. I like you too, Midoriya. Words left his lips with eternal softness. Todoroki put a hand on Midoriya's cheek, making Boy look him in the eyes. I do for quite some time now, he said, and gave Midoriya a light peck on the cheek. Midoriya's eyes widened as cheeks turned ever redder. Sure, he was hoping for some kind of positive reply, but this wasn't even in his deepest fantasy for this night. He stood mind blown while Todoroki let out a light chuckle. Cute, he breathed out quietly. Yes, the same Todoroki, who was known for being emotionless, with indifferent expression on his handsome face most of the time. Midoriya's eyes stung with coming tears of joy as he buried his face in taller Boy's chest, hugging him tightly. He did it. He made this evening the best in his entire life. Uraraka and Asui were the first ones to run up to them with bright smiles and loud congrats. The next moment, Midoriya was surrounded by cheering friends. Everyone was washing Todoroki with questions and jokes. When Midoriya remembered about Kirishima, he stepped aside a little and looked in Boy's direction. Kaken? Kirishima heard everyone clapping. He steadied his breath for a second, before putting microphone on a small table. He looked at Midoriya. Boy's cheeks were flushed, and a warm smile played on his lips. I bet I look the same. He chuckled, attracting Midoriya's attention. Good luck to us, Kirishima mouthed, grinning. He straightened and cleared his throat, before slowly making his way to Bakugou. Each step made his heart beat faster. Thoughts of running away kept crawling into his head, but Kirishima thrust them away. He wasn't going to give everything up after coming this far. He thought of every possible outcome and prepared himself even for the worst ones. Nothing could catch him off guard tonight. Kirishima stopped in front of Bakugou. Please don't laugh. Their idea of sitting down on one knee wasn't promising, but it was the easiest way to match Bakugou's eye level without asking him to stand up, which would look even worse. As Mina said, better than nothing. Kirishima exhaled, calming himself down. He'll deal with the embarrassment later. Kirishima slowly sat down on one knee, meeting Blonde's bright eyes. These eyes he got lost in every time they were alone. Kirishima reached out his hand, cheeks burning. I like you, Bakugou, he said softly. Will you be my boyfriend? Blonde's eyebrows shoot up at the words. For a few seconds his eyes wandered everywhere but Kirishima. Boy could swear he saw blush dusting Bakugou's cheeks. His emotions kept constantly changing, before stopping at one that Kirishima haven't seen before. Kirishima watched Boy warily. Was it surprise, confusion, anger, bewilderment? This time he couldn't read it. His hand trembled as Bakugou's eyes gleamed. He sat up straight, his hand moving towards Kirishima's. Kirishima smiled brightly, heart thumping in his chest. I did it, I. Bakugou's hand hovered over his for a brief moment, his fingers suddenly tensing. Kirishima met his eyes again. Their beautiful color darkened. Please. Kirishima held his breath, fighting unbearable urge to squeeze his eyes shut. His smile weakened, but didn't yet disappear, hope still burning. Next seconds were a blur. He heard familiar crackling, followed by quick footsteps not far from him. Harden, he could hear Mina scream, before Blonde's hand jerked to the side. The next moment a sharp pain pierced Kirishima's shoulder, wiping his usual smile from his face. He instantly grabbed the place of the impact out of instinct, losing balance and feeling skin burn under his palm. Go to hell, shitty hair, Bakugou's low growl echoed in his ears, as he hit hard floor with his back. His vision went foggy. Quick steps. Slamming of the door. Quiet voices. High-pitched ringing. Kirishima was lying on the floor, gritting his teeth, eyes squeezed shut. Touches of his hand sent new jolts of horrible pain through his shoulder. He waited for it to go away, but it was only getting worse with every second. Kirishima could feel every piece of him protest, as he propped himself with one arm, half sitting up. Head empty, he listened to what felt like his own heartbeat. Kiri, Mina nudged him to the present. Kirishima blinked until her features came into focus. Are you all right? She gently put a hand on his cheek, eyes filled with concern. I lost him. Kirishima wanted to speak, but no words were coming out. All this for nothing. Worse than nothing. His eyes stung with upcoming tears and sight wandered from Mina to Denki and 𝗧𝗏. You were wrong. You all were fucking wrong. Kirishima wanted to scream. Wanted to run away. Hot tears started streaming down his cheeks. Out of all possible outcomes, his worst fear came to life. Sparks of electricity ran up Denki's arms, switching Kirishima's attention to the others around him. Kirishima's eyes slid over his classmates. They were nothing but black and white figures now. All their voices sounded quiet and distant. Kirishima blinked away the tears as his sight stopped at Midoriya. Boy stood wide-eyed, holding Todoroki's hand. Holding hands now? Kirishima's lips curved in a rueful smile. He shook his head slightly, chasing ungracious thoughts away. He couldn't cry. Not now. Kirishima. 𝗧𝗏 asked cautiously, making Kirishima look up again. It hurts. Kirishima's lips parted again, but words stopped midway. He bit his lower lip. Don't be selfish. He couldn't spoil this evening even more. Not when Midoriya got what he wished for just moments ago. And I was told to go to hell. By the one I love. A low chuckle left his lips, head falling onto his chest. Pathetic. Light movement of shoulders sent another jab of pain, making him shudder. His hand reached for the aching spot. Shit. Kirishima's teeth sunk deep into his bottom lip. Let me see, Todoroki squatted by his side, reaching for Kirishima's shoulder. Kirishima sighed. It's okay, I can deal. Why? An attempt to shrug resulted into yet another stab of pain. His fingers curled into tight fists. Fuck. Hurts like hell. Izuku, can you pass a bottle of water from the table? Todoroki asked, adding a soft please. Kirishima saw Boy nod and step aside. His shoulder prickled and ached as he turned to look at it. One glance was enough to send shivers down his spine. He felt his chest tighten at the sight of his torn black shirt with slightly burned edges. Skin glowed red and radiated heat. A burn. He swallowed hard. Kirishima had to deal with explosions and fire a lot during his sparring with Bakugou. He sometimes received a few blasts after teasing Blonde at the dorms. However, he never let his guard down at those moments. Kirishima used his quirk every time he felt the need. Bakugou, in spite of being short-tempered, was always aware of the situation too. He never let his explosions hit Kirishima when he wasn't hardened. Blonde always stopped himself, seeing Kirishima defending without using his quirk. Fire never got close to him. Until today. You must hate me more than anything now. Here, Midoriya's voice brought Kirishima's attention back. Boy handed Todoroki a small bottle and sat beside him. He wavered and glanced at Kirishima with apologetic look in his eyes. Don't be selfish. Smile. Kirishima shook his head. Don't, he managed a light smile. I'm good. He felt his stomach turn at such an obvious lie. He knew Midoriya won't believe it. No one would. But Kirishima didn't need their comments now. I'm happy for you too, by the way. He grinned widely this time. He watched Boy mouth a brief thanks, his lips curling into shy smile, before he glanced at his burn. Kirishima blinked fast. Coming up with another sentence was harder than he thought. And this? He drawled, nodding at his shoulder. It'll heal up after I'll see recovery girl. He made a lame excuse of another smile. True, Todoroki intervened, looking at Kirishima's torn shirt. But now we need to take this off. His ability to read the room and stay calm was saving Kirishima a lot of trouble. Todoroki looked at him with a silent question, earning a confident nod. Kirishima gritted his teeth, holding all the swearing to himself, as Todoroki pulled torn shirt off. Fuck. Better kill me. The second shirt fell to the floor, he exhaled loudly. Kirishima's eyes followed Boy's further movements. Todoroki folded Kirishima's shirt in a couple of layers and soaked it in water. Bear with it for a moment, he said softly, and put a cool cloth over the burn. It'll get better soon. Kirishima nodded. However, a low growl still escaped his lips when the fabric touched his bare skin. You might need these. Todoroki turned around to where the voice was coming from. Momo walked up, handing him a roll of clean bandages and a small bottle of some kind of a lotion. Todoroki tilted his head slightly in reply. Learned first aid with Mom a lot, she added and smiled softly at Kirishima. Thank you. Kirishima nodded, not daring to look up. He didn't want to see another eyes full of worry and compassion. It was the last thing he needed now. I appreciate that a lot, he said quietly, and felt a light pet on the head. Gentle sensation made him meet Girl's eyes. She gave him another light smile, handing him a bottle of fresh water. I owe you a cup of coffee later, he chuckled. No need, Momo giggled, but I'll remember that. She winked and walked up to other girls. I owe more than a coffee though. Kirishima looked at the bottle and took a couple of big sips. He was too preoccupied with his brief chat with Momo to pay attention to Todoroki. Pain seemed to ease. Kirishima looked at the boy, who was unrolling one end of the bandage. Kirishima wanted to say, but Todoroki interrupted. It's nothing, he met Kirishima's eyes. Raise your other arm a little bit. Kirishima obeyed silently. He waited as Todoroki was wrapping bandage around his shoulder. It wasn't tight. Kirishima could move freely without feeling that much pain now. Todoroki tied a note and pulled away. He eyed his handiwork and nodded with a pleased, almost unnoticeable smirk. Should be good. Thanks. Really? Kirishima gave him an apologetic smile and added, saved me here. Todoroki chuckled. It's nothing. He helped Kirishima stand up and looked at the bandage once more. Kirishima, Denki called his friend softly, making Kirishima turn around. He held up his hoodie. Bad idea to go out like that. Denki gave the best trying to act like everything is all right smile. Kirishima rubbed the back of his neck, not sure how to respond to that joke. Worry was written across Denki's face. Thanks, man, he said simply. He tried to pull it on, but a jab of dull pain made him stop. He wavered. Right. Help? 𝗧𝗏 arched his eyebrow. Might use some, Kirishima laughed. 𝗧𝗏 helped him get into the hoodie. He looked at Kirishima, his lips parting, but said nothing. His expression said everything he couldn't though. It's fine, Kirishima bumped his shoulder. But y'all owe me a game night. He looked at Denki and Mina. It was unnecessary, but nothing else came to his mind. Now all he wanted was to get away from everyone and set his suffocating emotions free. His eyes wandered over his classmates one again. Kirishima was thankful that most of them didn't say anything. Probably they didn't even know what to say. Kirishima turned to where Todoroki and Momo stood and bowed. "Thank you so much." He earned yet another "it's nothing" and turned around. "Let's get out of here." "Kiri," Mina started. But Kirishima didn't let her finish. "I need some fresh air," he said simply. "Ah. Almost forgot." He sighed and turned around to meet Midoriya's eyes. Smile. "Congrats again. We gotta celebrate after. At our spot." He grinned and watched Boy flush, nodding fast. "Wait." Mina wavered, watching Kirishima open the door. What did go to hell?" Kirishima said and felt his heart ache. Was exactly what he said. He heard her quiet gasp as the door slowly closed behind him. Door closed with a light thud, leaving Kirishima standing alone in a quiet hallway. Go to hell. Words echoed in his head, making his heart ache. World around him crumbled to pieces. Eyes stung with upcoming tears. Kirishima's fingers slid through his messy hair. Shoulder throbbed at the movement, sending a nasty sensation through his arm and neck. Go to hell, Kirishima whispered, feeling sick. He hates me now. Thought pierced his chest with a sharp pain. Kirishima leaned against the wall behind him, hot tears now running down his cheeks. He wished everything to be nothing but a bad dream. However, it wasn't. Everything felt too real. Pain felt too real. Clock on the wall counted minutes passing in silence. Only Kirishima's quiet sobbing filled the hallway, interrupting it. Go to hell, he snickered, looking up at the ceiling. Who was I to get my hopes up? Kirishima's shoulders sunk low. Question hanging in the air. But what is there about me for Bakugou to like anyway? I'm hardly over the average. His hand slid down his cheek. I'm not too handsome or strong. I'm not as smart as him. Not even close to start with. His lips curved in a rueful smile. Kirishima tried his best during their study sessions, but wasn't getting any better. At least he didn't feel so with Bakugou constantly cursing him for making mistakes. I'm not even that great of a hero. My quirk. Kirishima looked down at his hands. He hardened his fingers, eyes sliding through the pattern it made on the skin. It's not flashy or cool. I can't fight like others. Always taking punches, winning them time to do real work. Sidekick. His hand curled into fist, knuckles turning white. Punching bag at best. He smirked to himself. At least served as a good one for Bakugou. Light laughter left his lips, followed by quiet sobbing. I'm pathetic. He hit his hip, letting emotions out. Pathetic. Another hit. Pathetic. And another. Pathetic. 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 He grit his teeth. Tears streamed down his cheeks, falling onto the floor. Ijiro, you are fucking worthless, Kirishima whispered to himself. A sudden click of the door returned him to the present. Kirishima had to go back. He had to continue this evening. For Midoriya. For Todoroki. For everyone. Smile. Kirishima blinked away the tears, wiping the rest on his sleeve, and turned to the door. 𝗧𝗏 looked him over with concern, before quietly asking, Are you? I'm coming. Kirishima managed a weak smile. Want to sing with me? He knew it was impossible to hide his swollen eyes, red cheeks, wet sleeve and collar of the hoodie. But he could pretend like nothing happened. At least for another hour. He looked at 𝗧𝗏 with pleading eyes. Don't ask anything. Please. Unnecessary questions were the last thing he needed now, and the only person capable of understanding that was right next to him. 𝗧𝗏 was Kirishima's last hope for keeping it together. Spanish? 𝗧𝗏 grinned at him. Oh, come on. Kirishima rolled his eyes, but nodded anyway. Language mix it is then. 𝗧𝗏 winked and ruffled his hair, as Kirishima strolled past him into the room. Thank you. Kirishima smiled and threw a playful stop at the friend. Everyone fell silent the moment they appeared at the entry. Kirishima glanced at 𝗧𝗏, earning a confident nod. Where are mics? He asked, throwing his arm over Kirishima's shoulders. Turn Dynro on. He said a quiet sorry at the friend, hearing him wince from the touch. Kirishima pushed him with a hip and made his way to a small table. Catch, he threw 𝗧𝗏 one of the microphones. Vamos, 𝗧𝗏 laughed, running up to the center of the room. Let's have some fun. Kirishima joined him a second later with a bright smile on his face and another microphone in his hands. He tried not to look at other classmates. He was scared to catch one of those concerned looks again. Instead, Kirishima concentrated on the music and 𝗧𝗏's movements. 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲 Dynro. 𝗨𝗧𝗵𝗲 no tengo. 𝗧𝗏's voice flowed softly but lively. Kirishima felt himself relaxing and sang along. They laughed and danced around, lighting up the mood in the room. A few moments later, Kirishima saw Denki getting up. He took another free microphone, joining them. Slowly, tension around the room disappeared. Kirishima needed that. Needed distraction. Once boys finished singing, Ojiro and Midoriya gave them a high five and took their microphones. Kirishima hoped to get some water, but Midoriya caught him by the hand. "Sing with us," he smiled. Kirishima nodded, grinning. Boys chose a new song and kept the evening going. Soon light chatter and laughing started filling up the room again. It seemed like evening just started, except everyone was looking a little bit wary. But even this feeling vanished after a couple of minutes. Kirishima's throat was dry, but taking a break wasn't an option, especially when he noticed Midoriya exchanging glances with Uraraka. Girl nodded and whispered something to 𝐎𝐩𝐽𝐼𝐴. "It isn't good." Kirishima chuckled lightly, meeting Uraraka's eyes. After song finished, girls came up, hugging Kirishima around the waist and asking to sing with them too. He sighed with a smile. Refuse isn't an option. They giggled and turned another song on. About 2 hours later, happy but tired, everyone walked into the dorms. Kirishima watched classmates make their way to the rooms, still keeping light chatter going. He congratulated Midoriya and Todoroki once more, before turning to the stairs. Denki was the first one from their small party to leave. He gave Kirishima an apologetic look, but said nothing, seeing him smile and reply. Kirishima knew what he wanted to say, but that wouldn't do any good. The hardest part was convincing Mina to leave. She was his best friend, but sadly the worst person to stay with right now. She took this evening events as her fault, and made it clear to Kirishima. He wasn't ready to hear any apologies, possible ways to fix the situation, or it's gonna be alright from her. After all, even if it was her and Denki's idea, Kirishima was the one making final decisions and going for it. So he stayed quiet, hoping for 𝗧𝗏's help. "Give him some space," Kirishima heard 𝗧𝗏 quietly tell Mina. "There's always tomorrow." "Thank you." He smiled to himself. Mina sighed, nodding and saying her goodbyes, before making her way to the room. She possibly threw one more glance in Kirishima's direction, but he didn't want to see it. Now Mina was only a reminder of what happened just a few hours ago. A wave of uneasiness washed over Kirishima, making him remember every little detail of this evening. "Let's go," 𝗧𝗏 said, attracting his attention. However, Kirishima didn't look up. He only nodded and started walking. 𝗧𝗏 accompanied Kirishima up to his room, pausing near the door. His eyes were following friend's movements as he waited. Kirishima pushed the door open and walked inside. He didn't say anything and hoped for 𝗧𝗏 to decide what will be better now. When Kirishima heard his approaching steps and a light thud of closed door, he turned around. In the darkness of the room, he felt safer. Felt free from pretending. Kirishima's eyes got used to the darkness and found 𝗧𝗏's ones. "Well, he started, voice shaking. "Been a great day." Kirishima paused for a moment, feeling his chest tighten. It was getting harder to breathe. His arms slid around his waist. "Can't wait for tomorrow," Kirishima added, before falling to his knees, tears streaming down his cheeks. The next second 𝗧𝗏 rushed to Kirishima, hugging him. He tried not to touch his burned shoulder, to not cause any pain. 𝗧𝗏 gently stroked Kirishima's back, not saying a word. They both perfectly knew how no words were able to make it better. No one has ever noticed it, but 𝗧𝗏 was closer to Kirishima than even Mina. He knew what his friend needed the most now and what he had to do. That's why 𝗧𝗏 let him cry out, before starting to talk. "Let it out," he said softly. "I'm here." Words immediately hit Kirishima's head, making his last bit of self-control break. He shivered and screamed into 𝗧𝗏's shoulder. Sobs grew louder. 𝗧𝗏 pulled him closer. "It's okay, let it all out," he whispered. He knew Kirishima well enough to understand how he felt. If Kirishima genuinely cared about someone, he put all his soul and heart into them. No explanation needed for what must have been happening when he was in love. And today he not only was rejected, he got a bad burn on the shoulder and was told to go to hell. Kirishima's whole world was built around Bakugou. He knew him better than anyone else, and was the only one being able to tolerate his attitude. He felt when Blonde was pissed, or just joking around. He could talk him into hanging out with others. Kirishima even managed to get Bakugou helping them with studying. And he was the only one who said that there is more to him than everyone sees. Sometimes, when 𝗧𝗏 and Kirishima were hanging out together, he told how different Bakugou can be if he's calm and collected. He was telling how funny and easygoing he was. I even talked him into watching a shitty horror movie with me, Kirishima said once, while they went to buy snacks with 𝐎𝐻𝐢𝐻𝐼. After that he thought for a moment, and added, he's a better person than you think. 𝐬𝐻𝐼 was sure this evening will be a success. Everyone could see Bakugou acting differently towards Kirishima. He liked him. It was out of discussion. But today made no sense to 𝐬𝐻𝐼. If Bakugou likes Kirishima, then why did he hurt him that much? If they all were wrong, then he could simply say no and walk away. Why did he have to burn his shoulder and throw such cruel words at him? 𝐬𝐻𝐼 knew he wasn't the only one confused. He stroked Kirishima's head, wondering how hard it must be for him now. 𝐬𝐻𝐼 felt his shirt getting wet from his tears. There was so much he wanted to do, but at the same time he could do nothing. Kirishima clenched the hem of 𝐬𝐻𝐼's shirt. Why, he mumbled against his shoulder. Why he did that? I wish I knew, 𝐬𝐻𝐼 whispered, running his fingers through Kirishima's hair. He hates me. He paused for a second, feeling his heart ache. 𝐬𝐻𝐼, he hates me now, he choked out in a new, but now quiet scream escaped his lips. He doesn't, 𝐬𝐻𝐼 said. Look at me. He waited for Kirishima to look up, before cupping his cheeks and gently brushing away rolling tears with his thumbs. Bakugou would never hate you. 𝐬𝐻𝐼 looked Kirishima in the eyes, noticing how exhausted he was. His hand slid down Kirishima's neck to the shoulder, making boy wince. Sorry, 𝐬𝐻𝐼 jerked it away and hugged him. He waited a couple of seconds before adding, there was a reason he did it, and we will find it, okay? He listened to Kirishima's breathing becoming steady and sobs getting quieter. Thank you, 𝐬𝐻𝐼, Kirishima whispered as exhaustion took over, and he dozed off, leaning onto 𝐬𝐻𝐼's shoulder. It's gonna get better, 𝐬𝐻𝐼 said quietly. I promise. He wiped last tears from Kirishima's cheeks and gently picked him up. He laid Kirishima on the bed, before making his way out of the room. 𝐬𝐻𝐼 closed the door quietly and glanced at Bakugou's room. I don't know what your reason was, but he did not deserve that, he hissed, clenching his fists and feeling his own heartache. This is bullshit. Bakugou kicked a rock with his foot, sending it flying into a nearby tree. He was circling woods around 𝐻𝐼 for almost an hour now. He needed distraction. It was the only way to keep him at least somewhat calm. However, endless thoughts kept running through his head, and didn't seem to stop any time soon. What kind of sick joke was that? Bakugou felt a jolt of dull pain in his chest. It was a joke, right? Joke. He clenched his hoodie, knuckles turning white. Ache didn't go away, and he couldn't understand why. It had to be another prank from his idiots. A joke. 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 He convinced himself over and over again. Memory of Kirishima's confession slipped into his head. Bakugou froze and felt a lump stuck in his throat. Those shining scarlet eyes and a bright smile. Fuck, he screamed, letting out an explosion into the tree beside him. It was a joke. He tried to steady his breathing, but his composure wasn't coming back. Bakugou's thoughts were a mess. What if it wasn't? And there it was, another painful sting in his chest. What if there was a chance that shitty hair really meant what he said? Bakugou felt his cheeks burn, heart beating faster. Hope he felt before karaoke lit up again. Hope for Kirishima getting all dressed up only for him. Now it seemed possible. It seemed true. Could Kirishima like him? Bakugou stood in silence. Question hang on his mind. What if I was wrong? He swallowed hard. What if I hurt him badly? Bakugou felt a sudden urge to run back and hug his best friend. He still had a chance to change everything. He turned around, looking at the path he came from. However, the moment he started walking, different thoughts crawled into Bakugou's head. Cruel, dull, more believable ones. A memory of Kirishima hanging out with their classmates in the common room appeared before his eyes. Boy grinned brightly at others. His eyes shone with joy. Was it any different with me? Bakugou swallowed hard. Somehow he couldn't think of a moment Kirishima acted differently around him. All his memories seemed to blur together. Not a single their late evening study session or sparring came up his mind. He squeezed his eyes shut in a lame attempt to recall them. However, they seemed to mix with others into one major gray mass. Blonde shook his head, crackling in his palms appearing again. It never was something more than friendship. Why would it be now? Kirishima probably didn't ever think of him as someone special. One more sting at Bakugou's heart was enough to trigger his defense mechanism. Nonsense, he spat on the ground, turned on his heels and continued walking deeper into the woods. Another brief thought of Kirishima liking him back made Bakugou scowl. Like me back, he growled, chasing it away. Future #1 hero can't think of sappy things like that. He pushed his feelings away. Deep inside his soul. Somewhere for no one being able to reach it. so deep that Blonde himself would find it hard to feel it again. Or so he thought. These fucking emotions. This time his mind and ambitions took over. So lame of an upcoming pro hero. Crackling in Bakugou's palms faded. Upcoming hero. That was his goal. His own concept of happiness. Emotions made people weak and submissive, and Bakugou couldn't allow that happen to him. He aimed to be at the top and do his best. To be the best. His thoughts spiraled back to this evening. Dumb fucks. Bakugou rolled his eyes. Their so-called Baka squad always amazed him with their idiocy. Every their joke or prank seemed worse than previous ones. However, this evening was peak of their stupidity. How that should have been fucking funny, he growled. Wasted my time on some bullshit again. They constantly pulled jokes on him before, but none of them made him this mad. None of them hit close to home. And Bakugou would never admit this one did. Morons. Bakugou shoved unnecessary thoughts back again. How shitty hair even agreed to that anyway? He let out a low chuckle. To team up with that nerd. Really? He snorted. Thought they could come up with something better than using Deku to piss me off. After another half an hour of walking, his stomach grumbled. Great. He rolled his eyes and fished some money out of the pocket. Should be enough for something spicy. Bakugou turned to another path and made his way to the nearest ramen place. It wasn't so crowded during late evenings, so he could eat in peace. Blonde would lie if he said he enjoyed it though. Something was lacking. Maybe some company. Way to the dorms never felt this long. Usually Bakugou would listen to Kirishima's chatter or noisy laughter of others. This time it was quiet. Tedious. It was already dark when he opened an entry door. Blonde glanced around the common room. It was dark inside, but since someone has left the TV on, he could see a couple of cups standing on the table. Everyone seemed to be already asleep or hanging in their rooms. Couldn't they at least clean up after themselves? Bakugou clicked his tongue, turning off the TV and tossing cups into the sink for someone else to clean tomorrow. Dickheads. Bakugou came up the stairs, pausing for a moment. His eyes froze on Kirishima's door. He felt his stomach lurching. It was a joke, right? He bit his lower lip. It must have been. Blonde shook his head and walked up to his room. It was way past his usual bedtime. Bakugou yawned, taking his hoodie off. It flew onto his chair along with sweatpants. He glanced at the clock on the desk. But notebook with something like a sticky note on it caught Bakugou's attention first. He tilted his head in confusion. He wanted to come up to the desk and take a look, but another yawn stopped him. Bakugou was too tired to care, at least for now. A few minutes later he crashed on his bed, wanting nothing but a good sleep. This night had different plans for him though. The moment he closed his eyes, questions filled his head over again. What happened today? What will happen tomorrow? Was he right and it was a joke? Was he wrong? What if he hurt his only best friend? Clock counted minutes as Bakugou's eyes traced lines between his posters on the wall. He couldn't sleep. If he didn't run away from karaoke, all his questions would have been answered. I ran, Blonde growled. I fucking ran away. Not a single fight or villain made him run. And despite that one stupid joke did. The only thing left for him now was wait till tomorrow comes. His eyes slid to his phone. What did they do all this time? Bakugou's phone stayed silent since the minute he left karaoke. He sighed and took it from the bedside table. Screen lit up, making him frown. Bakugou let his eyes adjust to the light and opened Baka Squad chat. He scrolled through their latest messages. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, but he didn't find it anyway. No new messages were seen too, so he switched to his private chat with Kirishima. Bakugou texted a short "you sleeping?" without thinking. Fingers hovered above send button for a second before he deleted the message. What would he say after? Probably nothing. Time on the screen switched from 0:39 to 0:40. Bakugou sighed. He should have been asleep hours ago. It was weekend, but it didn't mean he could ruin his sleep schedule. Blonde threw his phone back to the table before turning to face the wall. He tried to close his eyes, but sleep wasn't coming. Pictures from this evening appeared on his mind, sending him back to karaoke room. A nasty feeling settled in his chest. Bakugou couldn't remember a couple of moments from the evening. It was almost like someone deleted them from his memory. Blonde was mindlessly tracing infinity signs on the wall with his finger, when a sudden noise caught his attention. Bakugou scooted closer to the wall. His curiosity spiked up. He chuckled, feeling like a kid, bringing his ear to the wall. Mumbling. Light footsteps. Shuffling. Isn't it like 1M? Bakugou furrowed his eyebrows. More footsteps followed by something falling on the floor. Huh. Gut feeling was telling Bakugou to go and check on his friend. But at the same time, this evening's events held him back. He heard Kirishima's door squeak open. What this idiot is up to? Kirishima's footsteps were rushed. It felt like he was trying to get out of his room as fast as he could. Bakugou bit his cheek. What the hell? He listened to the door being locked and boy flying down the stairs. Bakugou got up and slowly walked to the door. He glanced around the hallway, before making his way to the big window at the end of it. Blonde looked down at the wide entry stairs outside. Kirishima came out of the dorms and sat down in the middle. He leaned against the railing, his body visibly relaxing. Really? Bakugou scowled. He watched Kirishima for a couple of moments. If boy wasn't sitting so peacefully, Blonde would think he's waiting for someone. However, Kirishima did nothing special. Bakugou clicked his tongue. Weirdo. His eyes lingered on Kirishima a little longer, before he returned to his room. There was so much he wanted to ask, but it could wait for tomorrow. Now he needed sleep. Kirishima ran through gloomy streets, heavy footsteps getting closer with every second. Kirishima glanced back. His eyes widened at the sight of a huge monster. Villain's body was shaped from thorny vines. His eyes gleamed dark gold. Kirishima wanted to fight, but his quirk was no use now. He wouldn't stand a chance against vines. Please, someone, help, he screamed, hearing growling rise behind him. He prayed for a pro hero to be somewhere near. Someone who got a more suitable quirk. Someone who could fight long range. Kirishima's eyes filled with horror as he felt something touch his leg. A vine spiraled up his ankle, pulling him down. Kirishima hit cold ground, inhaling sharply. The next moment he was being dragged around the corner into a dark, narrow street. Fuck, please, someone, he cried out, clawing asphalt with hardened hands. Kirishima gasped as he suddenly got raised from the ground and thrown into the wall. Everything around him went black. His knees stung, hands shivered. He slowly propped himself to a sitting position, his body aching in protest. Kirishima glanced around him. Growling of the vine villain seemed to disappear. He was alone in a pitch-dark room. Kirishima buried his face into his knees. He wished this to end. Someone to save him. Kirishima cursed himself for being weak, when a painfully familiar voice rung above him. Isn't it Kirishima? Someone laughed. Kirishima's head jerked up. He was met with a cold glare of a young boy. Red Riot himself? Boy pointed at him with a finger, attracting attention of people around them. It was the same boy Kirishima miserably failed to save in middle school. Or should we call you copycat? Laughter rose, echoing around the room. Still can't fight, can you? Kirishima's eyes studied those around him with horror. Cold shiver ran up his spine at their familiar faces. They all went to the same middle school with him. Kirishima wanted to speak, but voice seemed to have left him. You were so proud of that quirk of yours, girl giggled. What happened? She leaned forward and faked a concerned look, before her lips stretched in a smug smile. Don't be rude. Can't you see an upcoming pro hero here? Another boy mocked. His eyes wandered around Kirishima for a second, before he arched an eyebrow. Oh wait, I can't see him too. More and more voices kept joining in. You should copy another pro hero this time, someone from the crowd teased. Could help you gain some confidence, maybe 𝗵𝗃𝗻. More laughter followed. Each word felt like a heavy bullet shot into Kirishima's head. He bit his lower lip. His head dropped onto his chest. Kirishima looked at the ground, avoiding eye contact with those around him. His eyes widened at the sight of his own reflection, eye instead of gray asphalt. Coal black hair framed his face, and his long-healed scar was now bleeding. Scarlet droplets of blood fell onto the surface under him, mixing in with darkness. Oi, shitty hair, voice made Kirishima look up again. Bakugou stood in front of him with a wide smirk on his lips. You really thought someone like you could stand by my side? He snorted. You had some confidence there, I must admit. Blonde leaned closer, eyes burning red. He grabbed Kirishima's chin, fingers digging into his jaw. Pathetic, he spat. You can't even fight some sluggish villain. Punching bag. Bakugou's fingers heated, burning Kirishima's skin. Kirishima pulled away and felt his eyes sting with tears. Please, stop, he sobbed, fingers curling into fists. Make it stop, he screamed, but his voice could barely be heard. Bakugou straightened and grinned even wider. What was that? He laughed, every sound painfully stabbing Kirishima's chest. Kirishima looked at Bakugou with pleading eyes. It couldn't be true. He refused to believe it. Suddenly Blonde's expression changed. I can't stand you, Bakugou growled. Go to fucking hell. An explosion thundered in the air. Wait, Kirishima screamed, but instantly felt burning heat crawl into his lungs. He couldn't breathe. Wait, Kirishima sprung up in his bed, his hands flying to his neck out of the instinct. He panted heavily, cold fingers digging into his skin. Vision went in and out of focus. Tears streamed down his cheeks. Burning sensation in his lungs slowly turned into stinging of the skin under his palms. Kirishima jerked his hands away, them lifelessly falling onto the sheets. Kirishima felt a lump stuck in his throat as his hardened fingers came into focus. He sprung up, throwing Denki's hoodie off to the floor and striding to the bathroom. Fuck. 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 Kirishima looked into the mirror, eyes studying his neck. Skin was covered in red scratches and a few cuts. Damn it, he hit the sink. Kirishima didn't have nightmares like this in a long time now, and he thought they'll never return. He slid down on the cold tiled floor. Kirishima tried to disable his quirk, but couldn't get a hold over his emotions. Fucking hell, he sobbed, hitting the floor again. Kirishima's burnt shoulder ached, head felt heavy, skin on the neck stung, room was stifling. It hurts, Kirishima choked out, feeling salt of his own tears on the tongue. Stop it, please. He could deal with karaoke consequences. In fact, he thought everything will work out eventually. However, he wasn't prepared for the weight of memories from the past come crushing onto him at the same time. It was too much to handle. Kirishima wiped running tears with his hand and slowly stood up. He didn't want to stay here any longer. He needed fresh air. Kirishima's body trembled, but hardening was gradually fading. He came up to his bed. He felt sick just by looking at it. Falling asleep was the last thing he wanted right now. Kirishima changed into his old black hoodie, ignoring the jolt of pain in his shoulder. He grabbed his phone from the desk and pressed the side button. Its screen lit up in the dark and Kirishima's eyes froze on the picture of Crimson Riot. Still can't fight, can you, copycat? A few stray tears fell onto the screen, blurring the picture. Kirishima squeezed his phone, knuckles turning white. Great timing, he growled and threw it back on the desk. Phone slid down the wooden surface and fell on the floor. Kirishima saw a low battery sign lit up, before it turned off again. Fuck, he exhaled and a low chuckle escaped his lips. For some reason, it seemed funny how Kirishima lived peacefully for years, and all it took was one moment to trigger his worst memories. One moment to push him into the darkness. He needed to get out of here. Kirishima turned on his heels and rushed to the door. He locked it with trembling hands, however was scared to let go of the handle. Don't look. Don't look. Don't look. But he did. Kirishima's eyes slid to Bakugou's door, and his whole body stiffened. You can't even fight. Punching bag. Go to fucking hell. Kirishima's vision blurred again. Several tears rolled down his cheeks. His head ached. He turned around and ran down the stairs. Each step he took felt heavier than the other. Kirishima swung dorm entry open and flopped down in the middle of the stairs. Cool air brushed his wet cheeks, slowing down his heartbeat. He leaned onto the railing, body relaxing into the cold of the night. Kirishima shivered. He didn't know what to do or where to go now. Somehow everything lost its sense. Can I be a hero? Kirishima hardened his hand. His eyes traced countless lines his quirk made on his skin. Quirk that is useless half of the time. I can't fight long range, he breathed out, turning his hand around and moved his fingers. I don't have speed, strength, or a cool weapon. I always need help. Kirishima let out a shaky sigh. I'm no good for a hero. He chuckled, wiping away the tears. It wasn't the first time he questioned his abilities. The only thing that kept him going was that he got into 𝐸𝐴. Come to think of it. Kirishima's voice became quieter. I never really got a chance to prove myself. He bit his lower lip. Feelings flooded his body. Hits of Ajiro's tail, heat of Bakugou's explosions, cold of Tetsutetsu's steel. All sparring sessions, classes. Kirishima swallowed hard. I got beaten up. He squeezed his eyes shut as a memory from this week slipped into his head. Is that all you got? Kirishima smirked, changing his defense position. You have a death wish or something? Huh, shitty hair. Bakugou's voice thundered along with explosion. Kirishima knew he didn't stand a chance against his best friend, but increasing endurance of his quirk with Bakugou's help sounded too appealing. Another explosion hit his body, smoke getting in the way of his vision. Kirishima's eyes darted around in attempts to spot Bakugou, but he wasn't fast enough. One hit to the gut, followed by a harder one in his head. The next second Kirishima's back hit the ground. Damn, he choked out and heard his friend chuckle. Told ya, Bakugou squatted by his side. You can't win against me. But I lasted longer this time, Kirishima pouted. He tried his best. Might get at least some credit for that. Well, Bakugou stood up. You're a better punching bag now. He laughed and stretched his arm out to help Kirishima up. Kirishima traced cold metal of the railing with his finger. Punching bag. Right? He chuckled quietly. A punching bag, even if I'm pushing my limits. He sighed and ran his hands through messy hair. A couple of strands fell onto his eyes. Bright red looked dark crimson in the darkness of the night. Crimson. An image of crimson riot appeared before his eyes. Copycat, tisk. Kirishima gritted his teeth and pushed his hair back. He threw his hood on and stood up. Dorms. Fighting. Villains. Heroes. He was sick of it. He was sick of his life. He was sick of himself. Kirishima looked at the night sky with a rueful smile. Why you made me like this? He knew he'll never get an answer, but question lifted at least the tiniest bit of weight off his shoulders. Who knows, maybe I'll make a good sidekick. Decoy. Kirishima's lips curved in a barely noticeable smile. It wasn't what he wished for, but definitely better than nothing. I want soda, he mumbled, taking his wallet out of the pocket of his hoodie. Kirishima looked inside and his lips stretched in a pleased smile at the sight of the money. Good thing I left some for the weekend. Way to the nearest 24/7 store felt short and calming. Kirishima sorted things out in his head. If he can't be a hero, then he'll help others to become ones. He won't stop working on himself, but nor he'll expect much coming his way. Kirishima smiled at his own conclusion and opened an entry door to the store. Kirishima's eyes wandered around the room. Bright light and colorful banners. Late night customer and quiet chit-chat. Where is it? He furrowed his eyebrows and made his way to one of the aisles. Must be somewhere here. Kirishima mumbled to himself, turning to the left. Oh. His eyes widened and froze at the corner of the store. He looked at a bright banner above the shelving, before coming closer. Kirishima bit his lower lip and smiled. It's even better than soda. Bakugou didn't know when he fell asleep, but he didn't hear clicking of Kirishima's door again. He grunted and stretched his hand toward the night table. After a few failed attempts, he finally found his phone. Bright electronic light shone into his eyes, making him squint. 9 in the morning, great, he grumbled, before feeling a lump form in his throat. There were no new texts or missed calls. Yesterday he didn't pay the slightest attention to that. He got so busy getting hold of his emotions that forgot about simple reasoning. If it all was a joke yesterday, then why no one called or texted him yet? Answer was simple, but Bakugou refused to believe it. Bakugou got up with a growl, stretching his back. He quickly changed into running clothes and splashed cold water on his face. He took headphones from the drawer and leaned to take his phone too, but his eyes froze on the wall separating his and Kirishima's rooms. Memories from this night appeared before his eyes. Kirishima slipping out of his room in the middle of the night. What was he up to anyway? Bakugou arched an eyebrow, all kind of thoughts crawling into his mind. Some too twisted to believe. He shook his head, chasing them away. Don't care. He did, but didn't want to brainstorm this issue in the early morning. He put in headphones and jumped into running sneakers. Karaoke. Confession. This night, if something could take his mind off latest events, it was running and music. Morning breeze sent a wave of pleasant shiver over Bakugou's body. His muscles ached for action. He took a couple of minutes to stretch and warm up, before starting his usual route around Ua. However, thoughts about yesterday didn't seem to leave that easily, so he tried to chase them away by straining his body even more. Bakugou took a longer route and picked up the pace, increasing the strain on his body. For now it seemed to work well enough. Bakugou panted, running up to the dorm doors. Pleasant exhaustion fled through his body. He paused for a minute, steadying his breath and stretching his muscles again. Bakugou looked at the entry door and frowned at the thought about his idiots. There was no way they'll let go of yesterday that easily. Fuck it. He stopped the music and entered the dorms. It was different from an early morning. Light chatter now filled the common room, accompanied by the sound of coffee machine. He glanced around, noticing that most part of their class was already awake. Bakugou wanted to quietly slip past them and to his room, when a sudden sound of something shattering made him freeze. His muscles tensed on instinct and head jerked to where it came from. Mina stood near Denki and 𝗧𝗏, with a broken cup at her feet. Her expression wavered between shock and pure horror. Mina didn't move. She stared blankly at the other side of the room. Bakugou followed her gaze and felt his chest tighten. Kirishima flinched the moment Mina's cup hit the floor. His eyebrows shot up as he watched its pieces scatter across the floor. "Mina, you okay?" Kirishima wanted to come closer, but she backed away. Don't." Mina shook her head, raising hands in front of her chest. "I have to clean this up first." "Hey," Denki swallowed hard. "Black, huh?" His lips twitched nervously. A barely visible spark of electricity ran through his fingers. Kirishima cocked his head, before catching on what he meant. "Oh," he rubbed the back of his neck. He visibly struggled with an answer for a moment. Kirishima breathed out and met friend's eyes. He winded a couple of black strands between his fingers. "It was shitty anyway." Kirishima shrugged with a smile. "Why not color it?" Bakugou held his breath, taking in coal black hair framing Kirishima's face. "Shitty." Bakugou knew what it meant. Kirishima fell back into his past. "Shitty." Bakugou felt shiver run up his spine. "It can't be my fault, can it?" His chest stung. Hands trembled. He couldn't take his eyes off him. He swallowed hard, not daring to move a finger. An unknown feeling glued him to the floor. His eyes flicked back to Denki. Bakugou never seen such a lame attempt of faking a smile when boy drawled, "Looking good, man." "Thanks," Kirishima smiled. 𝗧𝗏 exhaled heavily. "We're matching now." He managed a better smile and walked up to Kirishima. He ruffled boy's hair and chuckled. "Looks good on you." Bakugou watched 𝗧𝗏's arms swing around Kirishima's shoulders. It was only for a brief moment, but his eyes caught Kirishima tense at the action. 𝗧𝗏 went on with light chatter, trying to lead conversation another way. However, that wasn't what caught Bakugou's attention. 𝗧𝗏's gestures made Kirishima wince. Eventually Kirishima mumbled something that Bakugou couldn't hear, and 𝗧𝗏 quickly took his arm off his shoulders. Kirishima scrunched his nose at the sensation of 𝗧𝗏's hand sliding down his shoulders. "Is Todoroki up?" "Probably with Midoriya upstairs." "Why?" Denki tilted his head, studying his expression. "I need to change." Kirishima swallowed, before glancing at his shoulder. "That he did it well yesterday." "I can do it." 𝗧𝗏 patted his back. He noticed how uncomfortable Kirishima looked, and asking Todoroki to help again wasn't something he wanted to do, even if he stated the opposite. Kirishima smiled softly at him. "Thanks." He met 𝗧𝗏's eyes. His lips parted, then closed again. He wanted to say something, but not with others being around. Bakugou watched their interaction silently. Something has happened yesterday that he wasn't aware of. Did he got hurt? Did someone have a fight? He tried to answer these questions when noticed 𝗧𝗏 shifting to the side. Suddenly his eyes met Bakugou's. 𝗧𝗏's body visibly tensed, fingers curling into fists. His soft gaze turned into a piercing glare. Bakugou felt cold wave run over him. "What the?" We wanted to walk closer, but noticed Todoroki step in front of the boys. His lips moved in a silent, yet clear "Don't you dare." Bakugou felt his heart drop. "Good morning, Kirishima." Midoriya joined their party with a soft smile. Boy tried hard to keep his surprise at Kirishima's appearance, but his expression made it clear as day anyway. He saw 𝗧𝗏 shake his head as a tip to not mention. It decided to proceed with the usual chat. Midoriya put a hand onto Kirishima's back and lead him to the other part of the room. "How are you feeling?" Bakugou could be arrogant and rude. However, he wasn't dumb. It didn't need much for him to understand. It wasn't a joke. The rest of their conversation blurred into unrecognizable sounds as they took Kirishima to the kitchen, walking by his side. Midoriya whispered something to Denki. Bakugou swallowed hard, seeing them both turn to look at him. Their eyes met only for a brief moment. However, Denki made a clear warning to him, mouthing "Stay away." Bakugou backed to the entry door. He hit it with his back and slipped outside. Kirishima with black hair and pretend smile stood before his eyes. Kirishima returned mentally back into his past. He fell into a dark place. Bakugou never wanted him to. He couldn't deny it no more. "It's all my fault." His vision blurred. Heart hammered in his chest. Bakugou silently walked to the back of the building before falling on his knees. His palms crackled. Emotions spun out of control. What have I done?